A billionaire CEO discovers his most talented former employee counting change for baby formula at a convenience store. But when he pays for it, he has no idea that saving her tonight will expose a corporate conspiracy, a fraudulent ex-husband, and pull him into a storm that could destroy everything he's built. Will one act of kindness unravel secrets powerful enough to take down his empire? Or will it be the beginning of something neither of them saw coming? If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stick around until the end. You won't believe where this goes. Sophie Carter's hand shook as she placed the canister of formula on the counter. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed like dying insects, casting everything in that particular shade of nowhere. The kind of lighting that made 11 p.m. feel like 3 a.m., that made desperation look even more pathetic than it already was. The cashier, a kid who couldn't have been more than 19 with acne scars and dead eyes, scanned the item without looking up. $42.17. Sophie's stomach dropped. She'd counted the bills 3 times in the car. She had $38 and some change. The special hypoallergenic formula, the only kind Lily could keep down, had gone up again. Of course it had. "Sorry, can you hold on a second?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. She dug through her purse, fingers scraping past empty gum wrappers and receipts she'd kept meaning to throw away, searching for coins she knew weren't there. The cashier sighed, long and theatrical, like she'd personally ruined his night. Behind her, someone shifted weight. She could feel them watching. Heat crawled up her neck. This was what her life had become. 30 years old, Stanford MBA. Gathering dust in a storage unit she could barely afford, reduced to holding up a convenience store line while a teenager judged her for not being able to buy food for her sick baby. "I'm sorry," she said again, hating herself for apologizing, hating the shake in her voice. "I thought I had enough." She started counting out the bills again, even though she knew the exact amount. $38, 4 ones and the rest in 5s and 10s that she'd been saving for the electric bill that was already 2 weeks overdue. "Ma'am." The cashier's tone had gone from bored to annoyed. "There's a line." Sophie's eyes burned. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of strangers under these horrible lights that showed every crack in her foundation, every sleepless night written across her face, every failure that had led her to this exact moment. "I know. I just need—" She pulled out her wallet again, checked the empty card slots one more time like money might have magically appeared. Her credit cards had been maxed out months ago. The one debit card she had left connected to an account with maybe $12 in it, which she needed for gas to get to her 2 cleaning jobs tomorrow. "Look, if you can't pay, I need you to step aside." The words hit like a slap. Sophie opened her mouth, though she had no idea what she was going to say. That her daughter was 6 months old and hadn't stopped crying for 3 days? That the free clinic said it was probably just a virus, but Sophie knew, mothers knew, that something was wrong? That she'd already diluted the last of the formula to make it stretch, and Lily had screamed so hard she'd thrown up what little she'd managed to drink? "I'll cover it." The voice came from behind her, male, quiet, with the kind of certainty that made it clear this wasn't a question or an offer, so much as a statement of fact. Sophie turned. The man standing there didn't belong in a convenience store at midnight on a Tuesday in this neighborhood. His coat probably cost more than her car, the one currently making a concerning grinding noise she couldn't afford to diagnose. Everything about him was expensive in that understated way that only the truly wealthy pulled off. The watch, the haircut, the way he stood like someone who'd never had to count change in his life. He was maybe early 30s, dark hair, sharp features that would have been almost severe, except for something in his eyes that looked tired in a way she recognized. Not physically tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that sleep didn't fix. "That's not necessary," Sophie said automatically, even as her fingers tightened around her wallet. "I know." He'd already pulled out his wallet, already had a credit card ready. He handed it to the cashier without looking at the price. "Ring it up." The teenager took the card like this happened every day, like strangers paid for other strangers' formula in sketchy Boston convenience stores all the time at nearly midnight. Sophie stood frozen. Pride warred with necessity, and necessity was currently winning by a landslide because Lily needed to eat, and Sophie had exactly $4 to last until Friday, and that formula cost $42.17 plus tax. "Thank you," she managed. The words felt inadequate. Everything felt inadequate. The man didn't respond immediately. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not pity, exactly, though there was something there. Recognition, maybe. Or confusion. The cashier shoved the receipt at him. Need a bag? Yes. The man's attention shifted to the items he'd come in to buy. A bottle of children's Tylenol, a box of popsicles, and coffee. Not energy drinks or beer like most of the other customers at this hour. Actual coffee. The expensive kind from the refrigerated section. Sophie clutched the formula to her chest. She should leave. She should thank him again and get out before this got more awkward than it already was. But her feet wouldn't move. Some part of her brain was screaming that she knew this person, that she'd seen that face before, but the last year had turned her memory into Swiss cheese, and she couldn't place him. Sophie? Her blood went cold. He knew her name. She looked up sharply, really looked at him this time, and the floor seemed to tilt sideways. Nathan Hale. Nathan fucking Hale. Not just some random wealthy guy playing Good Samaritan, not someone she could thank and never see again. Nathan Hale, CEO of Sterling Edge, the company where she'd worked 4 years ago, where she'd been a rising star in the marketing department, where she'd had a corner office and a salary that made her parents proud, and a future that stretched out like an open highway. Nathan Hale, who'd been just another executive back then, the founder's son, smart and driven but still young, still finding his footing, not the billionaire he was now, not the face on magazine covers, not the man who'd taken Sterling Edge from promising startup to tech giant after his father's death. He was staring at her with the same shock she felt. Sophie Carter, I thought... He stopped, recalculated. What are you doing here? The question wasn't accusatory. It was genuine confusion, the kind that made sense because the last time Nathan Hale had seen her, she'd been giving presentations to venture capitalists in designer suits, not counting coins for baby formula at midnight. Shopping, Sophie said stupidly, then wanted to sink through the floor because obviously she was shopping. He could see the formula in her hands. You left Sterling Edge. Still not a question, a statement. 4 years ago, she'd quit via email with 2 weeks' notice and no forwarding information. She'd just disappeared from a job she'd loved, from a career trajectory that had been heading straight up. I did. Why? One word. Simple. Impossible to answer honestly while standing in a convenience store that smelled like old hot dogs and broken dreams. I got married, Sophie said, which was true, but also the least true thing she could have said. It didn't work out. Nathan's expression shifted, something closing down behind his eyes. The cashier was watching them now with open interest, like they'd become more entertaining than his phone. I should go, Sophie said, but thank you. Really, I'll pay you back. Don't worry about it. No, I will. Pride, stupid and stubborn and utterly pointless given the circumstances. If you give me your information, Sophie, he said her name again, gentler this time. It's formula for a baby. You don't need to pay me back. The kindness in his voice almost broke her. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and turned to leave. Her phone rang. The ringtone. The one she'd set for her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who watched Lily when Sophie had to work, cut through the store like a scream. Sophie's heart stopped. Mrs. Chen didn't call unless something was wrong. She answered before the second ring. What happened? Sophie, honey, don't panic. What happened? Louder now, sharp enough that Nathan took a step closer. Lily's fever spiked. I gave her the medicine like you said, but she's burning up and she won't stop crying, and I think maybe you should come home right now, or maybe we should call... Sophie was already moving, phone pressed to her ear, formula tucked under her arm like a football. Don't call anyone, I'm coming. 10 minutes. Keep her cool, wet cloths, not too cold. I'm coming right now. She hit the door at a run. The November air bit through her thin jacket. She'd parked 3 blocks away because the closer spots had been full and she hadn't wanted to pay for parking. 3 blocks suddenly felt like 3 miles. Her old Honda Civic sat under a broken streetlight, looking exactly as pathetic as she felt. She was fumbling for her keys when footsteps approached behind her. Sophie, wait. Nathan had followed her. Of course he had, because this night wasn't humiliating enough already. I have to go, she said without turning around. My daughter. I heard. Let me drive you. No. She found her keys, dropped them, cursed. Nathan bent down and picked them up before she could. When he straightened, he didn't hand them back. How high is the fever? I don't. Mrs. Chen didn't say exactly. Do you have a car seat? The question stopped her. What? In your car. Do you have a car seat? Yes, but my car's right there. He pointed to a black Mercedes parked illegally in front of the store, hazards blinking. We can take the car seat from your car and put it in mine. I can get you home faster than you can get yourself there. And if the fever's bad enough that you need to go to the hospital, you shouldn't be driving anyway. Sophie wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him she didn't need help, especially not from Nathan Hale. Especially not when she was standing here in clothes from Goodwill with her life in shambles while he stood there in his expensive coat offering charity. But Lily was sick. Lily was burning up, and Sophie's car had been making that grinding noise that meant something expensive was about to break. And if it died on the way home, okay, she whispered. Nathan moved immediately, efficiently, like someone used to making decisions and following through. He had her car unlocked and the car seat out in under a minute. The Mercedes was warm when he opened the back door, leather seats, that new car smell that seemed obscene compared to her Civic's odious old French fries, and desperation. The car seat clicked into place. Nathan checked it twice, tugging on the straps with the careful attention of someone who knew what he was doing. You have kids? Sophie asked, then immediately regretted it because, of course, she didn't know anything about his personal life anymore. A son, Nathan said simply. He's 4. She hadn't known that, hadn't known he'd gotten married, had a child. But then why would she? She'd cut ties with everyone from Sterling Edge when she married Grant. It had been easier than explaining, easier than admitting what her life had become. The drive to her apartment took 7 minutes. Nathan didn't try to make conversation, just drove with the kind of focused intensity that somehow made her feel safer. The radio was off. The only sound was the heater and the whisper of expensive tires on wet pavement. Sophie's apartment building came into view, 3 stories of peeling paint and broken gutters, the kind of place where half the residents paid weekly rates and nobody asked questions. She used to live in a condo in Cambridge. She used to have a doorman. 3rd floor, she said quietly. You can just drop me. Nathan was already out of the car. He had the car seat in one hand, his other hand hovering near her elbow like he wanted to steady her but didn't quite dare touch. They climbed the stairs in silence. Someone's television blared through a door on the 2nd floor. The hallway smelled like cabbage and cigarette smoke, despite the no-smoking policy that nobody enforced. Mrs. Chen opened the door before Sophie could knock, her lined face creased with worry. She's in the bedroom. I'm sorry, Sophie. I tried everything. It's okay. Thank you for calling. Sophie rushed past her. Lily was in her crib, face flushed and angry red, tiny fists waving as she screamed with the kind of fury only babies could achieve. Sophie scooped her up and her daughter's skin felt like fire against her hands. Hey, baby girl. Mama's here. I've got you. Lily's screaming didn't stop, but she turned her face into Sophie's shoulder, little body rigid with misery. Nathan appeared in the doorway, and Sophie had forgotten he was there, forgotten everything except Lily's fever and the fear that crawled up her spine like ice. How high? Nathan asked Mrs. Chen. The old woman looked startled to see him but recovered quickly. 102.5 last I checked. Maybe higher now. When did she last have medicine? 2 hours ago. Children's Tylenol, the dosage for her weight. Nathan nodded, pulled out his phone. There's a pediatric urgent care 15 minutes from here. I just looked it up. They're open until 2 a.m. I can't afford to... Sophie started. We're going, Nathan said, and his voice had gone hard, the voice of someone who built a billion-dollar company by the age of 32. Now. Sophie was too scared to argue. They were back in the Mercedes 2 minutes later, Lily still screaming in her car seat, Sophie in the back beside her, trying to stay calm even though her hands were shaking. Nathan drove faster now, but not recklessly, controlled, precise. Talk to me about symptoms, he said, eyes on the road. How long has the fever been going on? 3 days. On and off. The free clinic said it was probably viral. Just keep her hydrated, give her medicine for the fever. Any other symptoms? She's been pulling at her ear, won't eat, barely sleeping, just cries and cries. Sophie's voice cracked. I thought maybe teething, but the fever... Ear infection, probably, Nathan said. My son had one at 7 months. Same symptoms. They hurt like hell, but they're treatable. Sophie wanted to feel relieved, but relief required the luxury of certainty, and she had none. Lily screamed harder, arching her back, and Sophie fought tears because what kind of mother couldn't afford to take her baby to a real doctor when she was sick? What kind of mother had to rely on free clinics and hope? The kind whose husband had cleaned out their joint account and disappeared before his daughter was born, leaving nothing but debt and silence. The urgent care center appeared like a beacon. Nathan pulled up to the entrance, hazards on again, and was out of the car before Sophie could move. He had the car seat out and was heading for the door while Sophie scrambled to follow, grabbing her purse, her brain still stuck on the fact that Nathan Hale, Billionaire CEO Nathan Hale, was carrying her daughter's car seat through automatic doors like this was normal. The waiting room was nearly empty. A nurse looked up from behind the desk, took one look at Lily's red face, and heard the screaming, and stood immediately. How long has she had the fever? 3 days, Sophie said. 102.5 when we left, maybe higher now. The nurse was already moving, leading them back through doors to a small room with cartoon animals painted on the walls. Let's get her temperature first. I'm going to need you to hold her still. Sophie tried. Lily fought like a tiny demon, screaming louder when the thermometer went in her ear. 103.2, the nurse said, and Sophie's blood went cold. Doctor will be right in. She left. Sophie held Lily close, rocking her, whispering things that didn't help, and tried not to fall apart. Nathan stood near the door, jacket off now, sleeves rolled up, watching with an expression she couldn't read. You don't have to stay, Sophie said quietly. I know. I mean it. You've done more than enough. I can take it from here. Sophie. He moved closer, leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. I'm not leaving. Why? The question came out sharper than she intended. Why are you doing this? You paid for formula? Fine, that was kind. But this? Driving us here? Staying? You don't owe me anything. No, Nathan agreed. I don't. Then why? He was quiet for a long moment, looking at Lily instead of her. When he spoke, his voice was softer. When my son was 6 months old, my wife died. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sophie stopped rocking. Nathan, Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. She was coming home from her mother's house. He said it flatly, like reciting facts from a report. 1 minute I had a wife and a family. The next I had a baby who wouldn't stop crying and no idea how to do any of it alone. Sophie's throat tightened. The first time I took him to the ER because I was sure he was dying turned out to be gas, just gas. I was so scared I couldn't think straight, and the nurse looked at me like I was an idiot because I didn't know that babies just cry sometimes, that new parents panic, that terror is normal. He finally looked at her. Nobody should have to be that scared alone, Nathan said quietly. So that's why I'm staying. The door opened before Sophie could respond. A doctor walked in, young, tired-looking, with kind eyes. Hi there. I hear we have a very unhappy baby. The next 20 minutes blurred together. Temperature taken again. Ears checked. Lily screamed bloody murder when the otoscope went in. Throat checked. Questions about symptoms, duration, eating habits. Finally, bilateral ear infection. Bad one. I'm going to write a prescription for antibiotics and something for the pain. She should start feeling better within 24 hours, but the fever might take a bit longer to break. Sophie nearly collapsed with relief. An ear infection. Treatable. Fixable. Not meningitis or something horrible that her neglect had caused. The pharmacy here is closed, the doctor continued, but there's a 24-hour CVS about 10 minutes away. I'll send the prescription electronically. Any questions? How much? Sophie asked. The antibiotics. The doctor blinked. I'm not sure of the exact cost. Probably around $30 or $40. Your insurance? I don't have insurance. Silence. The doctor's expression shifted to something like sympathy, which Sophie hated. We have a program for self-pay patients. You can talk to billing at the front desk. Nathan spoke up. I'll cover it. No, Sophie said immediately. No, you've done enough. I can... Sophie, don't. He wasn't looking at her. Let me do this. The doctor glanced between them, clearly sensing tension but wisely choosing to ignore it. I'll leave you to sort that out. The nurse will be back with discharge papers. When the door closed, Sophie turned to Nathan. I can't let you pay for this. Why not? Because I don't take charity. It's not charity. Then what is it? Nathan met her eyes, and something in his expression made her breath catch. It's someone who used to work for me, who was one of the most talented people I'd ever met, who disappeared 4 years ago without explanation. It's me wondering what the hell happened that landed you in a convenience store at midnight counting change for formula. It's me wanting to help because I can, and because nobody helped me when I needed it, and that was the worst feeling in the world. Lily's crying had reduced to whimpers. Sophie held her tighter, felt the heat radiating off her small body, and all the fight just drained out. Okay, she whispered. Okay, thank you. They picked up the prescription on the way back to Sophie's apartment. Nathan went in while Sophie stayed in the car with Lily, administering the first dose of pain medicine the doctor had given them. By the time Nathan returned with a white paper bag, Lily's eyes were drooping. The drive back was quieter. Lily dozed fitfully in her car seat. Sophie stared out the window at the dark streets and tried to figure out how her life had become a tragedy someone else had to rescue. You want to tell me what happened? Nathan asked quietly. Sophie closed her eyes. Not really. 4 years ago, you were on track to make VP before you were 30. You were brilliant, Sophie. Everyone knew it. Then you just vanished. I got married. That's not an explanation. It's the only one I have right now. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then, Grant Mercer. Sophie's eyes snapped open. How do you... I remember. You started dating him your last year at Sterling Edge, brought him to the holiday party. Nice guy, charming. Worked in finance, right? Venture capital, Sophie corrected automatically. Then quieter. Or so he said. What does that mean? She shouldn't tell him, should keep her mouth shut, protect what little dignity she had left. But something about the darkness of the car, the weight of the night, the fact that Nathan had already seen her at her lowest, made the words come anyway. It means Grant Mercer wasn't who I thought he was. It means I quit my job because he convinced me we should move to New York for his career. It means I trusted him when he said he'd take care of everything, that I didn't need to work, that we were building a life together. Her voice went flat. It means I was 8 months pregnant when I found out there was no job in New York. There never had been. The company he claimed to work for didn't exist. Our bank accounts were empty. He'd been using my salary to fund a lifestyle I didn't even know we were living. Expensive dinners, trips, a gambling habit he'd hidden perfectly. Nathan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He left 2 weeks before Lily was born. Just disappeared. Left me with $60,000 in credit card debt in my name, an eviction notice, and a note that said he couldn't do it. Couldn't be a father. Couldn't be a husband. Couldn't be whatever it was I needed. The words hung there, ugly and true. I went back to Boston because it's where my sister lives. Got a tiny apartment, took jobs cleaning houses because nobody would hire a pregnant woman for anything else. Had Lily, tried to keep going. Sophie laughed, sharp and bitter. And tonight I couldn't even afford her formula. The Mercedes pulled up in front of her building. Nathan turned off the engine but didn't move. Why didn't you come back to Sterling Edge? He asked finally. After he left. You could have called. We would have hired you back in a heartbeat. And tell everyone what? That I'd thrown away my career for a con artist? That I'd been stupid enough to trust him with everything? That I was a single mother who couldn't afford daycare? She shook her head. I was ashamed, Nathan. I am ashamed. Sophie, thank you for tonight, for all of it. But I should go. She reached for Lily's car seat. Nathan's hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. What if I told you Grant Mercer showed up at Sterling Edge 3 weeks ago? Sophie froze. What? He came in for an interview. VP of Business Development. Had a resume that looked impressive as hell. Stanford MBA. 5 years at Goldman Sachs. 2 years at a venture capital firm in London. Nathan's voice was hard now. I didn't interview him personally, but my head of HR was about to make an offer. And then I saw him in the lobby waiting for his second-round interview, and I recognized him from that holiday party 4 years ago. Sophie's heart was pounding. Did you? I pulled his file, called Goldman, called the VC firm in London. Want to guess what I found? Nathan, he never worked at Goldman. The VC firm doesn't exist. The degrees are real. He did go to Stanford, but everything after that is fiction. Nathan turned to face her fully now. And you want to know the really interesting part? He listed you as a reference. Sophie Carter, former senior marketing manager at Sterling Edge, said you'd worked with him on several projects and could vouch for his character. Sophie felt like she'd been punched. He used my name. He used your name at my company, knowing I'd see it, knowing someone might call to verify. Either he's incredibly stupid or he assumed you'd never find out. Why are you telling me this? Nathan's expression was unreadable. Because Grant Mercer is now engaged to Melissa Winters, whose father happens to be Richard Winters, one of Sterling Edge's biggest investors. They met at some charity gala last month. The wedding's in 6 weeks. Richard loves him, thinks he's brilliant. Sophie's mind was racing. So Grant's still running cons. Looks that way. And I need to know... Nathan paused. Did you ever tell him anything about Sterling Edge when you were together? Company secrets? Product launches? Strategic plans? The question felt like ice water. Nathan, I would never... I'm not accusing you, I'm asking. Sophie thought back, sifting through memories she'd tried to bury. We talked about work sometimes, general stuff. I might have mentioned we were developing new software, but I never gave details. Everything was under NDA. Did he ask? Sometimes. He seemed interested in my career. I thought he was being supportive. She felt sick. He was gathering information, wasn't he? Nathan didn't answer directly. 3 weeks after that holiday party where I met him, we had a competitor announce a product suspiciously similar to one we'd been developing in stealth mode. Timeline was too fast for independent development. Someone had leaked. You think it was me? It wasn't a question. No, Nathan said firmly. I think it was him. Using information he got from you, probably through casual conversation. You wouldn't have known what he was doing. Sophie closed her eyes. Another betrayal. Another way Grant had used her. I never pursued it, Nathan continued. No way to prove the connection, and the leak could have come from anywhere. But now he's back, engaged to an investor's daughter, and I'd bet money he's still playing the same game. What are you going to do? That depends. Nathan looked at her steadily. What do you want me to do? The question sat between them, heavy with implications. I don't know, Sophie said honestly. Part of me wants him exposed, wants everyone to see what he really is, but part of me just wants to forget he exists and move on with my life. And which part is winning? Before Sophie could answer, Lily stirred in her car seat, whimpering. Sophie turned immediately, checking her temperature with the back of her hand. Still warm, but not as burning as before. I should get her inside, Sophie said quietly. The medicine will work better once she's settled. Nathan nodded and got out to help with the car seat. They climbed the stairs in silence again, Mrs. Chen having already left. Sophie's apartment looked even smaller and shabbier, with Nathan standing in it, the worn couch from Craigslist, the hand-me-down crib, the kitchen that was barely big enough for one person. She settled Lily in the crib, watching her daughter's eyes finally close in real sleep. The medicine was working. When she turned around, Nathan was standing in the doorway, looking at the apartment with an expression she couldn't quite read. Thank you, Sophie said again, because what else was there to say? For everything tonight. I don't know how I can ever have dinner with me. Sophie blinked. What? Dinner. Tomorrow night. Let me take you somewhere we can actually talk. Nathan, I can't just... I have Lily, and I work 2 jobs, and bring her. I'll bring my son. We'll make it early, kid-friendly. He pulled out his phone. What time do you finish work? I don't... Why are you doing this? Nathan looked at her for a long moment. Because I saw one of the smartest people I ever worked with counting coins for baby formula, and that's wrong. Because I think you deserve better than what happened to you, and because... He stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. Because I know what it's like to be alone, and you don't have to be. Sophie's throat tightened. She wanted to say no, wanted to protect herself from more humiliation, from Nathan's pity, from hope. Okay, she whispered instead. Okay. Nathan smiled, small but genuine, and it transformed his entire face. I'll text you details. You still have the same number. How would you... It's in the HR files, from when you worked for us. He left before she could overthink it, before she could change her mind. Sophie stood in her tiny apartment, listening to Lily's breathing even out, and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. Her phone buzzed 20 minutes later. Nathan Hale. Tomorrow, 5:30. Olivia's on Newbury, casual, just dinner and conversation. Then a minute later. Nathan Hale. And Sophie? What happened to you wasn't your fault, don't forget that. Sophie read the message 3 times before she let herself believe it was real. Then she checked on Lily one more time, felt her daughter's temperature already dropping, and sat down on her worn couch in the dark. For the first time in a year, she let herself cry. Not from fear or desperation, but from something that felt dangerously close to hope. Sophie woke up to silence, which was so unusual that for a moment she thought something was wrong. Then she remembered. The antibiotics, the pain medicine, Lily's fever finally breaking around 3 in the morning. Her daughter was actually sleeping, really sleeping, for the first time in days. The clock read 6:47 a.m. Sophie had exactly 13 minutes before she needed to leave for her first cleaning job. She moved quietly through the apartment, checking Lily's forehead, cool, thank God, before pulling on the same jeans she'd worn yesterday and a sweatshirt that had seen better days. Mrs. Chen knocked softly at 7 on the dot, like always. The old woman took one look at Sophie's face and smiled. She's better? Much better. The medicine worked. Sophie grabbed her keys, her mind already running through the day's schedule. 2 houses to clean, then she had a 3-hour gap before her evening shift at the grocery store. Barely enough time to come home, feed Lily, and change clothes. That man who brought you home, Mrs. Chen said carefully. He seemed very worried. Sophie paused at the door. He's just someone I used to work with. Mrs. Chen's expression said she didn't believe that for a second. Someone you used to work with who pays for sick babies and stays at hospitals until midnight. It's not like that. I didn't say it was like anything, but the old woman was smiling. Go, work. I'll take good care of her. The first house was in Brookline, a sprawling colonial owned by a couple who were never home and left detailed notes about exactly how they wanted things cleaned. Sophie had learned to tune out the passive-aggressive comments about streaks on windows or dust behind picture frames. The work was mindless, which usually helped, but today her brain wouldn't shut up. Nathan Hale had paid for her daughter's formula and antibiotics. Nathan Hale had driven them to urgent care and stayed for hours. Nathan Hale had invited her to dinner. And Grant was back, using her name as a reference, conning his way into her old company. Sophie scrubbed a bathtub with more force than necessary, trying to scrub away the anger that had been building since Nathan's revelation last night. Grant had taken everything, her money, her trust, her career, her dignity. And now he was engaged to some investor's daughter, probably spinning the same lies he'd told Sophie about his brilliant career and their perfect future. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She almost ignored it, but something made her check. Nathan Hale. How's Lily this morning? Sophie stared at the message, surprised he'd followed up. Most people who did good deeds didn't check back in. Sophie. Much better. Fever's gone. She's actually sleeping. Nathan. Good. Still on for tonight? Sophie's finger hovered over the keyboard. She could cancel. Make an excuse. Go back to her safe, small life where billionaire CEOs didn't complicate things. Sophie. Yes. 5:30. Nathan. I'll send a car. Sophie. That's not necessary. I can meet you there. Nathan. Sophie. Let me send a car. She didn't argue. Partly because she was too tired, partly because her Honda had started making an even worse grinding noise this morning, and she wasn't sure it would make it to Newbury Street. The second house was easier. A young family with 2 kids under 5 and a mother who apologized for every mess like it was a personal failing. Sophie actually liked this job. The mom, Jennifer, was only a few years older than Sophie and treated her like a person instead of a service. You look tired, Jennifer said, appearing in the kitchen doorway with a toddler on her hip. Long night. My daughter was sick. Oh no, is she okay? Yeah, ear infection. We got her medicine. Jennifer winced in sympathy. Those are brutal. Henry had one last month and I thought I was going to lose my mind from the crying. She shifted the toddler to her other hip. Listen, I know this is weird to ask, but are you looking for more work? Sophie paused mid-wipe of the counter. Depends on what kind. My sister just had twins. She's overwhelmed and her regular cleaning service canceled. She needs someone maybe twice a week. Good pay. And she's in Newton, so not far from here. Jennifer pulled out her phone. I could give her your number if you want. More work meant more money. More money meant maybe Sophie could stop diluting Lily's formula or patch the hole in her winter coat. Yes, thank you. That would be great. Jennifer beamed. Perfect. I'll text her now. She's going to love you. Sophie finished the job and headed home with an extra $20 Jennifer had pressed into her hand for the baby, which Sophie had tried to refuse and Jennifer had insisted on. And Sophie's pride had finally lost that particular battle. The money went into the envelope marked electric bill that was hidden under her mattress. Mrs. Chen handed over a sleeping Lily when Sophie walked in. She ate well, took her medicine, no crying. You're a miracle worker. No, the medicine is the miracle worker. I just hold babies and watch soap operas. Mrs. Chen gathered her things. Your young man called the house phone. Sophie froze. What? The one from last night. He wanted to make sure I had his number in case anything happened with the baby while you were at work. Mrs. Chen's eyes sparkled. Very thoughtful and handsome, I bet. Mrs. Chen, I'm old, not blind. Go have your dinner. Enjoy yourself. When's the last time you went somewhere nice? Sophie couldn't actually remember. Before Lily, before Grant, before everything fell apart. She spent an hour trying on every piece of clothing she owned, which wasn't much. Most of her nice clothes from her Sterling Edge days had been sold or were in storage. She finally settled on black pants that were only slightly worn and a blue sweater that didn't have any visible stains. It would have to do. The car service Nathan sent arrived at exactly 5:15. The driver was professional and polite, holding the door while Sophie wrestled Lily's car seat into the back. She felt ridiculous climbing into the town car in her bargain bin outfit, like a kid playing dress-up. Olivia's was the kind of restaurant where people went for business lunches and anniversary dinners. Soft lighting, cloth napkins, waiters who actually cared about wine pairings. Sophie had been here once, years ago, celebrating a promotion she'd earned at Sterling Edge. Nathan was already there, standing near the host stand with a small boy attached to his hand. The child had dark hair like his father's and was currently trying to climb up Nathan's leg like a tree. Carter, we talked about this. Inside voice. Inside behavior. But Dad, they have crayons. Nathan saw Sophie and something in his expression relaxed. Hey, you made it. Traffic wasn't bad. Sophie shifted Lily's car seat to her other arm. Her daughter was awake now, looking around with wide eyes. Nathan's son had abandoned the leg climbing to stare at Lily with the intense curiosity of a 4-year-old encountering a baby. Is that your kid? Yes, this is Lily. She's really small. She's 6 months old. Carter processed this information seriously. I'm 4, that's bigger. Much bigger, Sophie agreed, trying not to smile. The hostess led them to a booth in the back, quieter, with a high chair already waiting. Nathan moved with the practiced efficiency of a single parent. Car seat settled, diaper bag stowed, crayons and coloring book produced from seemingly nowhere for Carter. You came prepared, Sophie said. Learned the hard way. First time I took him to a restaurant without backup entertainment, he had a meltdown so spectacular that 3 other families left. Nathan didn't sound embarrassed, just matter of fact. Now I carry supplies like I'm going into battle. Carter was already coloring with intense focus, tongue poking out between his teeth. Lily watched him with fascination, one tiny fist shoved in her mouth. A waiter appeared, took drink orders, wine for Nathan, water for Sophie because she was technically still on call if Mrs. Chen needed her, and chocolate milk for Carter after extended negotiations. So, Nathan said once they were alone again, how are you, really? Sophie hadn't expected directness. Tired, broke, trying to figure out what I'm doing here. Having dinner. You know what I mean? Nathan leaned back against the booth. He'd dressed down from last night, jeans, a sweater, no tie, but still managed to look expensive. I meant what I said in the text. What happened to you wasn't your fault. I married a con artist. I quit my job for him. I let him control everything. That feels pretty fault-worthy. Did you know he was a con artist when you married him? No, but then how is it your fault? Nathan's voice was gentle but firm. Sophie, I've seen this before. Not exactly the same situation, but similar. Smart people getting manipulated by smarter liars. It doesn't mean you were stupid. It means he was good at what he did. Sophie looked down at Lily, who had grabbed her finger and was trying to eat it. I should have seen the signs. What signs? I don't know. Something. Anything. Did he hit you? The question was quiet but sharp. Sophie's head snapped up. No, never. He wasn't. It wasn't like that. What was it like? Sophie hesitated. She'd never told anyone the whole truth, not even her sister. But something about Nathan's steady gaze, about the way he'd shown up when she needed help without making it feel like charity, made the words come easier. At first, it was perfect. He was charming, attentive, said all the right things, made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. She shifted Lily to her other arm. Then little things started changing. He'd get upset if I made plans without telling him first. Said he just wanted to be included, wanted us to be a team. That seemed reasonable. Nathan's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened slightly. Then he suggested I quit my job, said I was stressed, that we didn't need the money, that we should focus on starting a family. I love my job, but I was tired and he made it sound so appealing, just taking a break, stepping back, letting him take care of things. Sophie's laugh was bitter. I thought it was romantic, thought he wanted to take care of me. Isolation, Nathan said quietly. Classic control tactic. I figured that out later, after he was gone and I had time to think. Sophie watched Carter color, his small face scrunched in concentration. By the time I realized what was happening, I'd already quit, already moved, already lost touch with most of my friends because Grant always had a reason we couldn't meet them. Work was too demanding, or they were bad influences, or he'd planned something special for us instead. The waiter returned with drinks. Carter immediately grabbed his chocolate milk with both hands, like someone might take it away. When did you know something was really wrong? Nathan asked. When I found the credit card statements. I was 8 months pregnant, couldn't work, completely dependent on him. And I found out he'd maxed out 5 cards I didn't even know existed, all in my name. Sophie's voice went flat. He cried, said he had a problem, that he'd get help, swore it would never happen again. I believed him because what else was I going to do? I was about to have a baby. Nathan's hand tightened around his wine glass. 2 weeks later, I woke up and he was gone. Just gone. Left a note saying he couldn't do it. The apartment was in my name, the debt was in my name, and I had exactly $200 to my name. Sophie looked at Nathan. So, yeah, maybe it wasn't entirely my fault, but I made choices that led me there. I chose to trust him. I chose to quit my job. I chose to ignore warning signs because I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. Sophie, I'm not looking for pity. She needed him to understand that. I'm just trying to be honest about how I ended up counting change for baby formula in a convenience store while my former boss watched. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Carter had finished his milk and was now attempting to color outside the lines with deliberate rebellion. My wife and I had been married for 6 years when she died, Nathan said finally. We met in college. She was studying architecture, I was in business. Everyone said we were perfect together. Sophie hadn't expected him to share. She stayed quiet, listening. But the truth is, we weren't perfect. We fought about my hours, about the company, about me prioritizing work over family. The night she died, we'd had a massive argument because I'd missed Carter's doctor's appointment. Again. Nathan's voice was steady, but Sophie could hear the pain underneath. She left angry, told me I cared more about Sterling Edge than my own son. And she wasn't wrong. Nathan, the last thing I said to her was that she was being unreasonable, that someone had to provide for the family, and that someone was me, so she needed to handle the small stuff. He looked at Sophie. Those were my last words to my wife. And then a drunk driver ran a red light, and she was gone, and I got a phone call that made me realize I'd wasted 6 years taking her for granted. Sophie's throat tightened. So, when you talk about choices and fault and mistakes, Nathan continued, I get it. I live with it every day. The difference is I had the luxury of money and resources when everything fell apart. I could afford grief counseling and night nurses and private daycares. You didn't have any of that. You had to survive on your own, with a newborn, with no support system. And you did. You're still doing it. Barely. Barely is still surviving. Don't discount that. Carter chose that moment to spill his water, sending ice cubes skittering across the table. Nathan moved fast, grabbing napkins, cleaning it up with the kind of calm that came from extensive practice. "Sorry, Dad," Carter mumbled. "It's okay, buddy. Accidents happen. Just try to be more careful, yeah?" The waiter returned, pretending not to notice the water incident, and took their food orders. Sophie chose the cheapest thing on the menu out of habit, even though Nathan had made it clear he was paying. Old instincts died hard. Once the waiter left, Nathan pulled out his phone. "I want to show you something." He turned the screen toward her. It was a LinkedIn profile. Grant Mercer, complete with his fake credentials and a professional headshot that made Sophie's stomach turn. "That's him," she said unnecessarily. "Read the experience section." Sophie scanned it. VP at Goldman Sachs. Senior associate at Whitmore Capital in London. The lies were so detailed, so confident. How does he think he'll get away with this? Because he has so far. I did more digging after I dropped you off last night. Nathan swiped to a different screen, what looked like a background check report. Grant Mercer has been running variations of this con for at least 8 years. Different cities, different identities, always targeting women with money or connections. Sophie felt sick. "I didn't have that much money." "No, but you worked at a tech startup on the verge of major growth. You had access to information. You had connections in the industry." Nathan looked at her. "I think you were a target from the beginning." The words hit like a punch. "You think he sought me out specifically?" "I think he saw an opportunity. Smart young woman, rising career, probably trusting because why wouldn't you be?" Nathan's voice hardened. Men like Grant are predators. They find people who have something they want, and they take it. "What did he want from me? I wasn't rich. My family isn't connected." "Information, probably. Access to Sterling Edge's inner workings. Maybe he was planning to use it for insider trading, or to leak to competitors, or just to have leverage somewhere down the line." Nathan put his phone away. "The fact that you got pregnant probably complicated his plans. Kids make things messy, harder to disappear." Sophie felt like she might throw up. "So I was just, what, a mark? The whole relationship was fake?" "I don't know. Maybe parts of it were real. Maybe he convinced himself he cared." Nathan's expression was hard. But based on his pattern, based on what he's doing now with Melissa Winters, yeah, it was a con. Lily started fussing. Sophie bounced her automatically, muscle memory taking over while her mind reeled. Carter had abandoned his coloring to stare at Lily, making faces to try to make her smile. "She doesn't like me," he announced. "She's just hungry and tired," Sophie said. "It's not personal. When she's bigger, she can play with my trucks." The casual kindness of a 4-year-old somehow made everything worse. Sophie blinked hard, refusing to cry in the middle of a nice restaurant. Nathan saw. Of course he did. "Carter, why don't you go wash your hands before dinner? I'll come with you." "I can do it myself. I'm 4. "I know you can, but I need to wash mine too, so we'll go together." Once they were gone, Sophie took a shaky breath. She felt flayed open, every wound exposed. Grant had targeted her. The man she'd loved, the man she'd trusted with everything, had picked her out like a fish in a barrel. They returned a few minutes later, Carter proudly displaying clean hands. The food arrived shortly after: mac and cheese for Carter, chicken for Nathan, pasta for Sophie. She wasn't hungry, but she ate anyway because Lily needed her to stay strong, and passing out from low blood sugar wouldn't help anyone. "What are you going to do about Grant?" Sophie asked quietly, cutting her pasta into smaller pieces she didn't want. Nathan had been helping Carter with his mac and cheese, making sure it wasn't too hot. "What do you want me to do?" "I asked you that last night. Now I'm asking you." "Okay, here's what I know." Nathan set down his fork. "Richard Winters is a good man, but he's got blind spots when it comes to his daughter. Melissa is 26, never had a serious relationship, and Richard's been worried about her. So when she shows up with this charming, successful fiancé, Richard's thrilled. He's not going to want to hear that Grant's a fraud. So you can't just tell him." "I can tell him. Whether he believes me is another question." Nathan picked up his wine. "And here's the thing. If I go to Richard with this, it needs to be airtight. Bank records, background checks, documentation. Because if I accuse his future son-in-law of being a con artist and I'm wrong, or if I can't prove it, Richard will pull his investment. Sterling Edge will lose $20 million. Sophie set down her fork. "So you're stuck." Not stuck, careful, there's a difference. Nathan looked at her. But there's another option. What? You could tell him. Sophie nearly choked. Me? Nathan, I'm his daughter's fiance's ex-wife, the woman he abandoned pregnant. You have proof of his lies because you lived them. Nathan's voice was steady. And you have nothing to lose. You're not a Sterling Edge employee. You're not trying to protect an investment. You're just a woman telling the truth about the man who destroyed your life. Richard Winters won't believe me either. Maybe not, but Melissa might. The thought hadn't occurred to Sophie. She looked down at Lily, thought about another woman, younger, probably naive like Sophie had been, walking into the same trap. I don't know her. Why would she listen to me? Because you're not a bitter ex-girlfriend with an axe to grind. You're a single mother who got conned and is trying to make sure it doesn't happen to someone else. Nathan leaned forward. Look, I'm not saying you have to do this. It's your choice. But if you want to stop him, if you want to make sure he doesn't do to Melissa what he did to you, this might be the only way. Carter had finished eating and was now building a tower out of sugar packets while making engine noises. Lily had fallen asleep against Sophie's shoulder, finally comfortable after her medicine. I need to think about it, Sophie said. Fair enough. They finished dinner in relative quiet, Carter providing running commentary about his tower and whether dragons could eat mac and cheese. Nathan paid the bill without making a show of it, and before Sophie could reach for her purse, the waiter was already gone with his credit card. Outside, the November air had turned sharp. Nathan's driver was waiting, but Nathan made no move toward the car. I meant to ask you something else tonight, he said, before we got into all the heavy stuff about Grant. What? How would you feel about coming back to Sterling Edge? Sophie went still. Nathan, not as a favor, not as charity, as an actual employee doing actual work that the company actually needs. He shifted Carter to his other hip. The boy had gotten sleepy, head drooping onto his father's shoulder. We're launching a new community outreach division, programs for underprivileged kids, coding education, mentorship. I need someone to run it who understands both the tech side and the human side. Someone who's brilliant at strategy, but also knows what it's like to struggle. You're describing a job that doesn't exist yet. I'm describing a job I'm creating, for you, if you want it. Sophie's heart was pounding. What's the catch? No catch. 60-hour work week, benefits, childcare stipend, flexible hours so you can actually be there for Lily. Nathan met her eyes. You'd be reporting it directly to me, which might be weird given everything, but I trust you and I think you could build something really special. $60,000. Sophie hadn't made that much money since before Grant. It was more than her 2 cleaning jobs and grocery store position combined. It was health insurance. It was stability. It was a future. Why? The word came out hoarse. Why would you do this? Because 4 years ago, I watched you give a presentation that convinced 3 different VC firms to invest in Sterling Edge. You were 26 years old and you commanded that room like you'd been born to it. Nathan's voice was firm. You were brilliant then. I don't think that's changed. I think you've just been buried under circumstances that would have broken most people. But you're still standing, still fighting. That's the person I want running this division. Lily stirred against Sophie's shoulder. Carter had definitely fallen asleep on Nathan's. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Take the weekend. Come by the office on Monday if you want to discuss details. Nathan pulled out his phone one-handed, typed something, showed her the screen. That's my personal number, not my assistant, not my office. Me. You have questions, you call. The driver approached, clearly having received some silent signal. Nathan shifted Carter more securely. Let me get you home. The drive back to Sophie's apartment was quiet, both kids asleep. Nathan walked her up to the 3rd floor again, carrying Lily's car seat, while Sophie unlocked the door. Mrs. Chen wasn't there. She only stayed during work hours. The apartment felt smaller than ever with Nathan standing in it a second time, but somehow less shameful than before. Thank you, Sophie said. For dinner. For everything. Nathan set down the car seat carefully. Lily didn't stir. Think about the job offer. I will. He was almost to the door when Sophie spoke again. Nathan? About Grant. About telling Melissa. She took a breath. I want to do it. I don't know if it'll work, but I want to try. Nathan turned back, something like approval crossing his face. Okay, I'll set it up. Just like that? Just like that. He pulled out his phone again. Richard's hosting a dinner party next Friday. Engagement celebration for Melissa and Grant. I was already invited. I'll bring you as my +1. Sophie's eyes widened. You want me to confront him at his engagement party? I want you to talk to Melissa somewhere Grant can't control the narrative. Somewhere other people will see and hear what you have to say. Nathan's smile was sharp. And I want to watch his face when he realizes you're not the broken woman he left behind. Something fierce bloomed in Sophie's chest. Okay? Okay. Nathan headed for the door again, paused. Sophie, you're going to need something to wear, something that makes you feel like the woman you were before Grant, before all of this. I'll send you a contact, personal shopper. She'll take care of it. Consider it part of the job offer package. Nathan, I can't. Yes, you can. And you will. His voice softened. Let someone help you, just this once. Let me help you. After he left, Sophie stood in her dark apartment, holding her sleeping daughter, and tried to process everything that had just happened. A job offer, a plan to expose Grant, a personal shopper. Her phone buzzed. Nathan Hale. I forgot to mention, the job comes with a signing bonus. I'll have HR send you the details Monday. Should be enough to cover any outstanding debts and get you into a better apartment. Sophie. Nathan, this is too much. Nathan. This is business. You have skills I need. I'm compensating you accordingly. Don't overthink it. Sophie. How much is the signing bonus? Nathan. Enough. Get some sleep. Your daughter finally is. Sophie looked at Lily, peaceful in her car seat, medicine working, fever gone. She thought about Grant at his engagement party, spinning lies to another woman. She thought about Sterling Edge, the career she'd abandoned, the person she'd been before everything fell apart. And for the first time in a year, Sophie Carter let herself imagine that maybe, just maybe, she could get it all back. The personal shopper's name was Elena, and she arrived at Sophie's apartment Saturday morning with the kind of energy that suggested she'd had 3 espressos and genuinely loved her job. Nathan said you need something that makes a statement, Elena announced, sweeping into the tiny living room like it was a penthouse suite. She was maybe 50, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that cataloged everything in seconds. For Richard Winter's dinner party, yes? Sophie nodded, suddenly self-conscious in her old sweatpants and the t-shirt she'd slept in. Lily was on a blanket on the floor, chewing on a plastic ring and looking suspicious of this stranger. Good. I love a challenge. Elena pulled out a tablet, started scrolling. Nathan mentioned you used to work in marketing at Sterling Edge. Before that Stanford MBA. So you know how to dress for power, you've just forgotten. I didn't forget. Sophie gestured vaguely at her apartment, at Lily, at the entirety of her current existence. Had life happen. I understand. Elena's voice softened just slightly. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to remind you what it feels like to walk into a room and own it. Not because of the clothes, but because the clothes let you remember who you already are. It sounded like motivational poster nonsense, but something in Elena's tone made Sophie believe her. They spent 2 hours looking at options on Elena's tablet. Not just dresses, but complete outfits, shoes, accessories, the works. Elena had a talent for knowing exactly what would work without making Sophie try on 50 different things. This one, Elena said finally, turning the screen. It was a deep emerald dress, elegant but not flashy, sophisticated without trying too hard. With these, black heels, simple but expensive looking. And this, a delicate gold necklace. Sophie looked at the price tags and felt her stomach drop. Elena, I can't afford. Nathan's covering it. Don't argue. He was very clear about that. Elena was already adding items to a cart. He also said something about a signing bonus for a job. He offered me a position at Sterling Edge. Smart man. Are you taking it? Sophie looked at Lily, who had abandoned the plastic ring in favor of trying to eat her own foot. I think so. I'm still processing. Process faster. Opportunities like that don't wait around. Elena stood, gathering her things. Everything will be delivered Monday. The dress should fit perfectly, but if it needs alterations, call me immediately. You have my number now. After Elena left, Sophie sat on her worn couch and tried to imagine herself in that emerald dress, walking into Richard Winter's house, facing Grant. The image wouldn't quite form. She still felt like the woman counting change at a convenience store, not someone who could command a room. Her phone rang. Jennifer, from the cleaning job. "Hey, my sister wants to meet you. Are you free this afternoon? She's desperate and willing to pay cash up front for the first month if you can start next week." Sophie needed the money, even with Nathan's job offer looming. Nothing was guaranteed until she actually signed paperwork. "Yeah, I can meet her." "Where?" Jennifer gave her an address in Newton. Sophie spent 20 minutes making herself presentable, then bundled Lily into the car seat and prayed her Honda would make it there and back without incident. The house was massive, colonial style, perfectly manicured lawn, the kind of place that screamed old money. Jennifer's sister, Amanda, answered the door looking exactly as overwhelmed as advertised. Her hair was in a messy bun, there were spit-up stains on her shirt, and behind her Sophie could hear the distinctive sound of two babies crying in harmony. "You're Sophie? Thank God. Come in. Ignore the disaster. Twins they're a lot." The interior of the house was beautiful under the chaos. Hardwood floors, crown molding, furniture that probably cost more than Sophie's car. But there were baby swings in the living room, bottles everywhere, and the exhausted desperation of new parenthood hung in the air like smoke. "I normally wouldn't hire someone without references or an agency," Amanda said, jiggling one crying baby while eyeing the other in a bouncer. "But Jennifer vouched for you, and I'm at the point where if you can make my house livable twice a week, I'll pay whatever you want." They negotiated terms, $200 per session, twice a week, cash. It was good money for cleaning work. Sophie tried not to seem too eager, tried to maintain some professional distance, but Amanda saw right through her. "You need this," Amanda said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, I do." "Me too, so we're helping each other." Amanda shifted the baby to her other shoulder. "Jennifer mentioned you have a daughter?" Sophie gestured to Lily, who was watching the chaos with wide eyes from her car seat. 6 months. Alone? The question was direct but not unkind. Sophie had learned to spot the difference. "Yeah, that's hard. I've got my husband and I'm still losing my mind. I can't imagine doing this solo." Amanda paused. "Look, if you ever need to bring her when you clean, that's fine. The twins won't care and it's not like the house can get messier." Something in Sophie's chest loosened. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen the upstairs bathrooms." Sophie started the job the following Wednesday. Amanda hadn't been exaggerating about the mess, but there was something almost meditative about restoring order to chaos. She worked while Lily napped in her car seat and the twins did whatever babies did in their swings. Amanda appeared halfway through, looking slightly more put together than the first meeting. "Can I ask you something personal?" Sophie was scrubbing the kitchen counter. "Sure." "Jennifer said your ex left before your daughter was born. Do you ever—" Amanda stopped, reconsidered. "Do you ever wish you could just show him what he's missing? Like, rub it in his face that you're fine without him?" Sophie thought about Grant, about the engagement party on Friday, about the emerald dress being delivered Monday. "Actually, I'm working on that right now." "Yeah?" Amanda leaned against the counter, genuinely interested. "He showed up in Boston, got engaged to some investor's daughter, and I'm going to their engagement party to tell her exactly who she's marrying." Amanda's eyes went wide. "That's incredibly badass. Or incredibly stupid. I haven't decided which yet. Can I vote for badass? Because honestly, that's the kind of revenge fantasy that gets me through 3 a.m. feedings." Sophie laughed, surprised by how good it felt. "I'll let you know how it goes." The dress arrived Monday afternoon, along with the shoes and necklace, all packed in boxes that looked too expensive to actually open. Sophie tried everything on after putting Lily down for her nap, standing in front of the bathroom mirror that was too small to show the full effect. But she could see enough. The dress fit perfectly, skimming her figure in ways that reminded her she used to care about things like appearance and first impressions. The heels added 3 inches and made her feel powerful instead of just tall. The necklace caught the light. She looked like someone who had their life together. It was a complete lie, but a convincing one. Her phone buzzed with a message from Nathan. "Nathan Hale, HR sent the employment contract. Check your email. Review it. Let me know if you have questions." Sophie grabbed her laptop. ancient, slow, but functional, and pulled up her email. The contract was there, formal and official, with Sterling Edge's logo at the top, Director of Community Outreach. $60,000 annual salary, full benefits starting day one, childcare stipend of $1,200 monthly, signing bonus of $25,000, payable upon acceptance of position. Sophie read the signing bonus line 3 times to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. $25,000. That was more than she'd made in the entire past year. That was enough to pay off her credit card debt, pay Mrs. Chen what she actually deserved, fix her car, put down a deposit on a better apartment. She called Nathan without thinking it through. He answered on the second ring. "You got the contract." "Nathan, this is insane. $25,000? That's standard for a director-level position. Actually, it's on the low end. I could probably justify 30. Please don't." "Why not? You're worth it." He sounded distracted, like he was working on something else while talking to her. "Look, I know it seems like a lot right now, but once you start, you'll understand. The work isn't going to be easy. You'll be building a division from scratch, managing budgets, coordinating with schools and nonprofits, reporting directly to me. It's a real job with real expectations." Sophie sat down on her couch, contract still open on her laptop. "I haven't said yes yet." "I know, but you're going to." The confidence in his voice should have been annoying. Instead, it was almost comforting. "How do you know?" "Because you're not the kind of person who counts change for baby formula if you have another option. You were surviving because you had to. Now you don't have to. So you're going to take the job, and you're going to be brilliant at it, and in 6 months you'll wonder why you ever hesitated." Sophie wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. "You have a lot of faith in someone you haven't seen in 4 years. I have faith in the person who convinced 3 VC firms to invest 7 figures each in a company that was barely 2 years old. That person is still in there. She's just been buried under some really terrible circumstances." Nathan's voice softened. "Let her out, Sophie. Let yourself be her again." After they hung up, Sophie stared at the contract for another 20 minutes. Then she signed it, scanned it with her phone since she didn't have a printer, and emailed it back to HR. Done. Committed. No turning back. Her sister called that night while Sophie was feeding Lily. "Mom said you haven't returned her calls," Claire said without preamble. "She's worried you're dead in a ditch somewhere." "I've been busy." "Doing what?" "You never tell me anything anymore." Sophie switched the phone to speaker so she could hold the bottle properly. "I got a job. A real one. At Sterling Edge." Silence. Then, "The tech company? The one you used to work for?" "Yeah." "How did that happen?" Sophie gave her the abbreviated version, running into Nathan, the job offer, leaving out everything about Grant and engagement parties and revenge plans. Claire was quiet for a long moment. "Sophie, is this guy trying to... are you sure this is legitimate? Because last week you were cleaning houses, and now you're suddenly getting hired by a billionaire CEO who just happened to run into you?" "It's legitimate. I signed a contract." "Have you had a lawyer look at it?" "I can't afford a lawyer, Claire." "Then how do you know?" "Because I'm not an idiot." Sophie's voice came out sharper than intended. "I know this sounds weird. It is weird. But Nathan's not. He's not trying to take advantage. He's trying to help." "Why?" "Because he can. Because he knew me before everything fell apart, and he thinks I'm capable of this job. And maybe..." Sophie stopped, surprised by the emotion in her voice. "Maybe because someone finally saw me as more than just a disaster waiting for the next thing to go wrong." Claire's sigh was audible even over the phone. "I'm not trying to rain on your parade. I'm just worried. You've been through so much, and I don't want you to get hurt again." "I know, but I'm taking the job, and I'm going to be fine." After they hung up, Sophie finished feeding Lily and got her ready for bed. The apartment felt different somehow, like the future had shifted from impossible to maybe, possibly, almost within reach. Friday arrived faster than Sophie expected. She spent the morning with Lily, the afternoon at Amanda's house cleaning while trying not to throw up from nerves, and the evening getting ready while Mrs. Chen watched the baby and provided running commentary. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Chen said when Sophie emerged in the emerald dress. "Like a movie star." "I look terrified." "That too. But beautiful terrified." The old woman adjusted Sophie's necklace slightly. "This man you're going to see tonight, Your ex-husband. You're going to tell him off? Something like that. Good. Men like that need to be told off. They think they can do whatever they want, and nobody will stop them. Mrs. Chen's expression turned fierce. You stop him. You make him see what he lost. The car service arrived at 6:30. Sophie kissed Lily goodbye, ignored the way her hands were shaking, and climbed into the back seat like she did this every day. Nathan was already in the car, dressed in a dark suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe used to. He looked up when she got in, and something in his expression shifted. You look... He stopped, started over. That dress is perfect. Elena has good taste. She does. But she didn't make you look like that. You did. Nathan handed her a glass of champagne from somewhere in the car's hidden compartments. Dutch courage. I don't drink anymore. Haven't since I got pregnant. Sparkling cider. I checked with Mrs. Chen. He held up his own glass. To confronting your past and taking back your future. Sophie clinked her glass against his. What if this goes horribly wrong? Then it goes wrong and we leave, and at least you tried. Nathan took a sip. But I don't think it will. I think you're going to walk in there, and Melissa is going to take one look at you and know something's not right. And when you tell her the truth, she's going to listen. How do you know? Because if she's anything like you were at 26, she's smart, and she's been looking for a reason not to trust something that seems too good to be true. Richard Winter's house made Amanda's place look modest. It was a genuine estate. Iron gates, circular driveway, multiple wings. Valets took cars at the entrance. Through the windows, Sophie could see people in evening wear, champagne glasses, everything gleaming. She almost told the driver to turn around. Nathan's hand found hers. You've got this. They walked in together, Nathan's hand warm on the small of her back. A server immediately appeared with champagne. The foyer was bigger than Sophie's entire apartment, all marble and crystal chandeliers. Nathan! A man in his 60s approached, gray-haired, confident, expensive suit. Richard Winters. Glad you could make it. And you brought a guest? Richard, this is Sophie Carter. Sophie, Richard Winters. Richard's handshake was firm. Any friend of Nathan's is welcome. Are you in tech as well? I used to work at Sterling Edge, actually. I'm returning as Director of Community Outreach. Wonderful. Nathan's been talking about expanding that division. Smart move. Richard's attention was already drifting to other guests. Drinks are in the main salon. Dinner will be served at 8. Enjoy yourselves. He disappeared into the crowd. Nathan guided Sophie through the rooms, pointing out people he knew, providing context she'd need. Investors, board members, other CEOs. The kind of people Sophie used to interact with regularly before Grant. And then she saw him. Grant was holding court near the fireplace, looking exactly like he always had. Handsome, charming, perfectly dressed. The kind of man who seemed trustworthy because he'd practiced looking that way. Next to him stood a young woman in a white cocktail dress, blonde, pretty, laughing at something Grant had said. Melissa Winters. Sophie's stomach turned. She looked so happy, so confident in her fiancé's affection, exactly like Sophie had looked 4 years ago. Do you want to wait? Nathan asked quietly. We could have drinks first, let you settle in. No, if I wait, I'll lose my nerve. They approached. Grant saw Nathan first, his expression shifting to polite professional interest. Then he saw Sophie, and the color drained from his face. Nathan, Grant said, recovering admirably fast. Good to see you. I don't think you've met my fiancée, Melissa. Actually, we've met several times. Her father and I do business together. Nathan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Melissa, I'd like you to meet Sophie Carter. She's joining Sterling Edge's executive team. Melissa extended her hand, warm and friendly. Lovely to meet you. Are you new to Boston? I've been here about a year. Before that, I was in New York. Sophie shook her hand, then turned to Grant. Hello, Grant. His jaw tightened. Sophie, I didn't expect to see you here. I'm sure you didn't. Melissa looked between them, picking up on the tension. Do you two know each other? We were married, Sophie said before Grant could deflect. For about a year. He left right before our daughter was born. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Melissa's smile froze. Grant's expression went carefully blank. I'm sorry, Melissa said slowly. Did you say married? Grant, you told me you'd never been married. It was a long time ago, Grant said smoothly. Sophie and I weren't compatible. It ended badly. I should have mentioned it, but it seemed irrelevant. Irrelevant. Sophie's laugh was sharp. Is that what we're calling it? Nathan's hand touched her elbow, grounding. She took a breath. Melissa, I know this is incredibly awkward, Sophie said, focusing on the younger woman instead of Grant. But came here tonight because I think you deserve to know who you're marrying. Not the version of himself Grant's shown you, but the real person. Sophie, don't do this, Grant said, and there was an edge of desperation under the smooth tone. Why not? You did it to me. Sophie turned back to Melissa. Everything Grant told you about his career is probably a lie. His credentials, his work history, his connections? Did he tell you about Goldman Sachs? Melissa nodded slowly. He never worked there. The company he claimed to work for in London doesn't exist. He's a con artist, Melissa. This is what he does, find successful women or women connected to successful families, and he uses them. For money, for information, for access. And when he's taken what he needs, he disappears. That's insane, Grant said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Melissa, she's clearly unstable. We had a bad breakup and she's never gotten over it. I'm not unstable, I'm honest. Sophie pulled out her phone. I have bank statements showing how he maxed out credit cards in my name. I have the lease for the apartment in New York that he claimed was for his job that didn't exist. I have documentation of everything. Melissa was staring at Grant now. Is this true? Of course not. She's lying because she's angry. About what? Nathan spoke up for the first time since the introductions. About being abandoned while pregnant? About being left with $60,000 in debt? Or about watching the man who destroyed her life try to do the same thing to someone else? Who the hell are you to talk? Grant's composure was cracking. You show up here with her like some kind of white knight? What's your angle, Nathan? Trying to get rid of me because I'm competition? Competition for what? You're not even qualified for the position you interviewed for. Your entire resume is fiction. Nathan's voice was ice. The only reason I didn't have security escort you out of Sterling Edge 3 weeks ago was because I wanted proof. And now I have it. Melissa had gone pale. Grant, just tell me the truth. Did you work at Goldman Sachs or not? Grant looked at her, at Sophie, at Nathan. Whatever calculation he was running behind his eyes came up short. It's complicated, he said finally. It's not complicated. Sophie's voice was steady now, all the fear burned away by anger. You lied. You've been lying since the day Melissa met you, just like you lied to me. The only difference is she gets to find out before you take everything and disappear. Melissa pulled off her engagement ring. Get out. Melissa, let me explain. Get out! Her voice rose, cutting through the ambient party noise. People were starting to stare. Grant looked at Sophie with pure hatred. You couldn't just let me have this, could you? You had to ruin it. I didn't ruin anything. You did that yourself. Sophie met his eyes without flinching. The difference is this time you don't get to walk away clean. Richard Winters appeared, sensing drama with the instinct of a father. What's going on here? Melissa handed him the ring. Your investment in Grant's new business venture? Cancel it. He's a fraud. Melissa, Richard looked between his daughter and Grant. I'll explain everything, but first I want him out of my house. 2 security guards materialized from somewhere. Grant looked at them, at Melissa, at Sophie, one more time. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yeah, Sophie replied, it really is. They escorted him out. The party had gone quiet, everyone watching. Sophie felt Nathan's hand on her back again, steady and sure. Richard was staring at his daughter. Someone want to tell me what just happened? Can we go somewhere private? Melissa's voice shook. I need to sit down. They ended up in Richard's study, Sophie, Nathan, Melissa, and Richard. Melissa had started crying quietly, the kind of tears that came from shock more than sadness. Sophie explained everything. Richard listened with the growing expression of fury, not at Sophie, but at Grant, at the situation, at himself for not seeing it. I should have checked him out more thoroughly, Richard said when she finished. Melissa seemed so happy. I wanted it to be real. It wasn't your fault, Dad. Melissa wiped her eyes. I believed him too. He was really convincing. They usually are, Sophie said quietly. That's how it works. Melissa looked at her. How did you survive it after he left? Badly, at first. Then one day at a time. Then, Sophie glanced at Nathan. Then I got lucky and someone reminded me I was more than what happened to me. I'm sorry, Melissa said, for what he did to you. And thank you for coming here tonight. That must have been terrifying. It was. But you deserve to know. Sophie stood. I should probably go. I have a 6-month-old with a babysitter, and I've hit my emotional quota for the evening. Richard stood too. Nathan, I'll call you Monday. We need to discuss Sterling Edge's security protocols if someone like Grant got as far as a second interview. Agreed. Outside, the November air felt sharp and clean after the stuffy house. Sophie's hands were shaking again, but this time from adrenaline instead of fear. You did it, Nathan said. You actually did it. I did, didn't I? Sophie laughed, surprised by the sound. I confronted my ex-husband at his engagement party, and now I'm probably going to throw up from stress. Want to get food first? There's a diner near your apartment. Best pancakes in Boston. Sophie looked at him. This man who'd paid for baby formula, who'd offered her a job, who'd stood next to her tonight while she faced down her past. Why are you doing all this? She asked. Really? Don't give me the answer about seeing potential or whatever. Tell me the truth. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Because when my wife died, I was alone, and I had money and resources and all the help I could buy, but none of it fixed the loneliness. None of it made me feel like a person instead of just a problem to be solved. He met her eyes. And when I saw you in that store counting change, I saw someone else who was alone, who was trying so hard to keep going even when everything was falling apart. And I thought maybe we could help each other stop being so alone. Sophie's throat tightened. That's terrifying. I know. I don't know if I'm ready for whatever this is. I know that too. Nathan opened the car door for her. But maybe we could start with pancakes and work our way up to whatever this is. Sophie got in the car. Nathan slid in beside her and told the driver about the diner. And for the first time in a year, Sophie let herself believe that maybe her life could be more than just surviving. Maybe it could actually be good. The diner was exactly what Nathan had promised. Vinyl booths with duct-taped repairs, fluorescent lights that flickered occasionally, and a laminated menu that had probably been around since the 80s. The waitress, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, didn't blink when they walked in, despite the fact that Nathan was wearing a suit that cost more than her monthly rent, and Sophie looked like she'd just left a cocktail party. 2 coffees, Nathan said, sliding into a booth, and whatever pancakes you recommend. Blueberry's good, chocolate chip if you want something sweet. Both, and bacon. Lots of bacon. After the waitress left, Sophie let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The adrenaline from the confrontation was wearing off, leaving her shaky and exhausted. How are you feeling? Nathan asked. Like I just jumped off a cliff and I'm still waiting to hit the ground. Sophie pulled off the uncomfortable heels Elena had picked out, flexing her toes under the table. Did that actually just happen? Did I really call out Grant in front of everyone? You did. And Melissa believed you. That's what matters. Her father looked like he wanted to kill someone. Richard's protective. He'll probably run a full background check on anyone Melissa dates from now on. Nathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, typed something quick, put it away. That was him, actually. Wants to meet next week to discuss how Grant got through our hiring process. Sophie wrapped her hands around the coffee mug the waitress had brought. Are you going to get in trouble for bringing me tonight? Why would I get in trouble? Because you brought your ex-employee to expose your investor's daughter's fiancé as a con artist. That seems like the kind of thing that could backfire. Nathan shrugged. Richard's angry at Grant, not me. And besides, better Melissa found out now than after the wedding. He paused. Though I should probably mention Grant's going to retaliate somehow. Men like him don't just slink away quietly. The thought had occurred to Sophie, but she'd been trying not to think about it. What can he do? Everyone knows what he is now. Everyone at that party knows. That's different from everyone everywhere. Nathan leaned back against the booth. He could spread rumors about you, try to damage your reputation before you even start at Sterling Edge. He could contest the debt you mentioned, claim it was joint spending. He could... Okay, I get it. I should be worried. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. Nathan's expression was serious. But whatever he tries, we'll handle it. You're not alone in this anymore. The pancakes arrived, massive stacks with butter melting on top. Sophie hadn't realized how hungry she was until the smell hit her. She ate mechanically at first, then with actual appetite as her body reminded her she'd been too nervous to eat all day. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said after a few minutes of quiet eating. "Sure." "Why didn't you fight back before? When Grant left? You could have gone after him for the debt, for child support. You have a Stanford law degree, MBA," Sophie corrected, "not law. Still, you're smart enough to know your options. Why didn't you use them?" Sophie set down her fork. "Because I was ashamed. Because I felt like it was my fault for trusting him. Because the idea of dragging everything into court, of having lawyers pick apart my marriage and my choices, felt worse than just trying to survive on my own." She looked at Nathan. "And because part of me thought I deserved it, for being stupid enough to fall for his act." "You didn't deserve any of it." My therapist says the same thing." "Well, my therapist did, before I couldn't afford therapy anymore." Sophie picked up her fork again. "You know what the worst part was? Not the debt or him leaving. It was realizing that my whole marriage might have been a lie. That every time he said he loved me, every plan we made, every moment I thought was real, it might have all been an act, and I'll never know for sure which parts were real and which parts were the con." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "My wife and I had a terrible marriage." The statement was so unexpected that Sophie stopped mid-bite. "Everyone thought we were perfect," Nathan continued. "College sweethearts, built a life together, had a kid. But the truth was, we were miserable. We stayed together out of habit, and because neither of us wanted to admit we'd made a mistake." He stared at his coffee. "After she died, everyone kept telling me how lucky I'd been to have her, how tragic it was that we'd been torn apart. And I couldn't say anything because what kind of person speaks ill of their dead wife? Nathan, the night she died, she told me I was a terrible father, that I cared more about making money than being a parent. And she was right. I was barely around. I missed everything. First words, first steps, all of it. I was building Sterling Edge, and I told myself I was doing it for them, but really I was doing it because work was easier than dealing with how broken my marriage was." Sophie reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. Nathan looked surprised, but didn't pull away. "So when people talk about my tragic loss," he said quietly, "I feel like a fraud. Because yes, I lost my wife. But I'd already lost my marriage years before that. The only difference is the car accident made it permanent. That doesn't make the loss less real. No. But it makes it complicated." Nathan turned his hand over, linking his fingers with hers. "And I'm telling you this because I want you to know that nobody's life is as clean as it looks from the outside. You're beating yourself up for making mistakes, but everyone makes them. The only difference is some people have the resources to hide them better." The waitress refilled their coffee. Sophie waited until she left before speaking again. "Can I tell you something terrible, please? When I saw Grant tonight, when he looked at me with that expression like I was ruining his life?" Sophie's voice dropped. "Part of me enjoyed it. Part of me was glad to watch him squirm. And that makes me feel like a bad person." "Why? He deserves to squirm." "Because I'm supposed to be better than that. Supposed to take the high road or whatever." Sophie laughed, bitter. "But I'm not. I wanted him to hurt like he hurt me. I wanted Melissa to see him for what he really is. And when she took off that ring and told him to leave, I felt vindicated. Is that wrong?" "No. That's human." Nathan squeezed her hand. "You're allowed to feel good about standing up for yourself. You're allowed to want justice. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person, period." They finished eating in comfortable silence. The diner was nearly empty now, just them and a couple of truckers at the counter. Outside, the city lights reflected off wet pavement from an earlier rain Sophie hadn't noticed. "I should get back," Sophie said eventually. "Mrs. Chen charges extra after midnight." "I'll drop you off." In the car, Sophie's phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Claire, Mom's Facebook friend saw you at some fancy party with Nathan Hale? What is happening?" Sophie groaned. "My mother's going to call tomorrow with 1,000 questions. What are you going to tell her?" "The truth, probably. That I got a job and confronted my ex-husband, and maybe I'm finally getting my life back together." Sophie looked at Nathan. "Is that accurate? Am I getting my life together, or am I just trading one complicated situation for another? Can it be both?" "That's not reassuring." I'm not trying to be reassuring, I'm trying to be honest. Nathan shifted to face her. Look, I offered you a job because you're qualified, and I need someone who understands both the tech world and what it's like to struggle. That's legitimate. But I also did it because I care about you, and those things are tangled up in ways that might get messy. Might? Will definitely get messy, Nathan corrected. People at Sterling Edge are going to talk. They're going to say, I hired you because we're involved, or because I feel guilty, or because I'm trying to play hero. And some of that's probably true. Sophie's stomach tightened. So what do? We do the job anyway. You work your ass off. You prove you deserve to be there, and eventually people shut up because you're too good at what you do to dismiss. Nathan's voice was firm. And if I'm crossing lines I shouldn't, you tell me. If this feels wrong or uncomfortable or like I'm taking advantage, you say something. And if you're the one feeling that way, then I'll say something. He smiled slightly. We're both adults who've been through enough to know better than to pretend everything's simple. The car pulled up to Sophie's building. The lights were still on in her apartment, which meant Mrs. Chen was probably asleep on the couch waiting for her. Thank you, Sophie said, for tonight, for everything. Stop thanking me. I'll stop when you stop doing things worth thanking you for. Nathan got out to walk her up, same as always. Mrs. Chen was indeed asleep on the couch, one of those Korean dramas playing on low volume. She woke when they came in, blinking groggily. How did it go? The old woman asked. Good, really good. Sophie handed her an envelope with cash, more than usual, because the signing bonus had hit her account that afternoon, and she'd immediately withdrawn enough to pay Mrs. Chen properly for once. Mrs. Chen counted it, eyes widening. This is too much. It's what I should have been paying you all along. The old woman looked at Sophie, then at Nathan, then back to Sophie. Things are changing. Yeah, they are. After Mrs. Chen left, Sophie checked on Lily, fast asleep, breathing easy, completely oblivious to the fact that her mother's entire life had shifted in the past week. Sophie stood there for a long time, just watching her daughter sleep, trying to process everything. Nathan appeared in the doorway. I should go. Wait, Sophie turned. I need to know something. When you saw me in that store, counting change, did you recognize me right away? Or did it take a minute? Nathan considered the question. I recognized you immediately, but it took a minute to believe it was really you. Why? Because the Sophie Carter I remembered was confident and polished and commanded every room she walked into. And the woman I saw that night looked broken. I didn't want to believe that was the same person. Sophie flinched. But then you thanked me for the formula, and I saw it in your eyes, that same strength, that same intelligence. It was buried under exhaustion and fear, but it was still there. Nathan stepped closer. You were never broken, Sophie. You were just surviving. There's a difference. I don't feel strong. You faced down the man who destroyed your life tonight. You protected a woman you'd never met from making the same mistake you did. You signed a contract to rebuild your career despite being terrified. Nathan's voice was gentle. That's strength. You just don't recognize it because you're standing too close. Sophie wanted to believe him, wanted to feel like the capable person he kept insisting she was. But all she felt was tired and overwhelmed and scared that this was all too good to be true. What if I fail? The words came out small. What if I take this job and I'm terrible at it? What if everyone was right and I'm just damaged goods? Then you fail and you try again. That's how it works. Nathan reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was intimate and unexpected. But you won't fail, because you're too stubborn and too smart and too determined to let that happen. You don't know that. I know you survived the worst year of your life with a newborn and no support system. I know you kept going when most people would have given up. I know you walked into that party tonight even though you were terrified. His hand lingered near her face. That's all the evidence I need. Sophie's breath caught. They were standing close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in Nathan's eyes, could smell his cologne, could feel the warmth radiating off him. This is complicated, she whispered. I know. You're my boss now. I know that too. I have a 6-month-old daughter and approximately 50 kinds of baggage. Sophie. Nathan's voice was soft. "I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just standing here." But the way he was looking at her felt like asking, felt like possibility and promise, and all the things Sophie had stopped letting herself want. She stepped back, breaking the moment. "You should go." Something flickered across Nathan's face. Disappointment, maybe, or relief. "Yeah, I should." He made it to the door before Sophie spoke again. "Nathan, when I start Monday at Sterling Edge, are we going to talk about this?" "About what?" "About whatever this is. Between us." Nathan turned back. "Do you want to talk about it?" "I don't know. I don't know what this is yet." "Then we'll figure it out as we go." He pulled out his phone. "HR will send you orientation information. You'll meet with department heads, get your security access, all the standard stuff. I'll have my assistant set up a one-on-one for us to discuss the Community Outreach Division goals." Very professional. "I'm trying." His smile was crooked. "It would be easier if you weren't looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you're trying to decide if I'm real or if you're going to wake up tomorrow and realize this whole week was a dream." Sophie laughed despite herself. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm real. The job's real. All of this is real." Nathan opened the door. "Get some sleep. Monday's going to be intense." After he left, Sophie changed out of the emerald dress and into her ratty old sweatpants. She washed her face, checked on Lily one more time, and sat on her couch in the dark trying to process the fact that her life had completely changed in the span of a week. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Nathan Hale. Forgot to mention, there's a Sterling Edge Foundation Gala in 2 weeks. Annual fundraiser, biggest event of the year. I need you there as the new Director of Community Outreach." Sophie. "Another party?" Nathan. "Afraid so. But this one's different. This one is your introduction to Boston's tech scene and as an executive, not as my +1. Sophie. "No pressure." Nathan. "You'll be great. And besides, you already have a dress that makes you look like you could run the world." Sophie. "I wore that one tonight." Nathan. "Then Elena will find you another one. This is part of the job, networking, representing the company, looking like you belong there. Which you do." Sophie stared at the message. 2 weeks ago, she'd been counting change for baby formula. Now she was supposed to attend galas and network with tech executives and represent a billion-dollar company. Sophie. "What if I'm not ready for this?" Nathan. "You're ready. You're just scared. That's different." Sophie. "How do you know?" Nathan. "Because I was terrified when I took over Sterling Edge after my dad died. I was 28, barely qualified, and everyone thought I'd run it into the ground within a year. But I did it anyway." Sophie. "And?" Nathan. "And I made mistakes and learned from them and eventually figured out what I was doing. Same as everyone else." Sophie. "That's not particularly comforting." Nathan. "It's not supposed to be comforting. It's supposed to be true." Sophie set down her phone and looked around her tiny apartment. In 2 weeks, she'd have her first paycheck. In a month, she could start looking for a better place. In 6 months, maybe her life would be unrecognizable from what it was now. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Monday morning arrived with the particular anxiety that came from first days. Sophie dropped Lily off at the childcare facility Sterling Edge had contracted with. Bright, clean, staffed by people who actually seemed to care about their jobs. Mrs. Chen had been offended at first, but Sophie had explained it was part of the benefits package, and the old woman had eventually agreed it made sense. The Sterling Edge building was glass and steel and everything Sophie remembered from 4 years ago. Her security badge worked on the first try. The elevator was still too fast, and when she stepped out onto the executive floor, she felt like she was stepping into a different life. Nathan's assistant, a sharp woman named Diane, who was probably in her 50s and radiated competent authority, met her at reception. "Sophie Carter? Welcome back. Nathan's in meetings until 11, but he wanted me to show you your office and get you settled." Her office. Not a cubicle, not a shared space. An actual office with a door and a window and furniture that looked new. Sophie stood in the doorway, trying to reconcile this with the apartment she'd woken up in. "It will have your computer set up by this afternoon," Diane said, handing her a folder. That's your orientation schedule. Meetings with each department head, HR paperwork, security briefing. Nathan wants to see you at 2 to discuss division goals and budget. Budget? You're running a department now. You get a budget. Diane smiled. Don't worry, Nathan's good about walking people through it. And if you need anything, my extension is on the sheet. I've been here 12 years. I know where all the bodies are buried. After Diane left, Sophie sat in her new office chair and tried not to cry. This was real. This was actually happening. Her computer arrived at 1. By 1:30, she'd managed to log in and start reading through the orientation materials. At 2 exactly, Diane called her extension. Nathan's ready for you. Conference room B. Nathan was already there when Sophie arrived. Jacket off, sleeves rolled up, papers spread across the table. He looked tired but focused, every inch the CEO who'd built a billion-dollar company. Close the door, he said without looking up. Sophie did. When she turned back, Nathan was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. How's the first day going? Overwhelming. Good overwhelming, but still overwhelming. That's normal. You'll find your rhythm. Nathan gestured to the seat across from him. Let's talk about what you're actually going to do here. They spent 2 hours going through everything. Programs Nathan wanted to implement, partnerships with schools and nonprofits, budget allocations, reporting structures. Sophie took notes until her hand cramped, asked questions when things didn't make sense, and slowly started to understand the scope of what she'd taken on. This is a real job, she said when they finally paused for coffee. I told you it was. I know, but I didn't believe you. I thought it was going to be some made-up position where I showed up and looked busy. Sophie flipped through her notes. This is actually important work. Why do you think I wanted you to run it? Nathan leaned back in his chair. You grew up in a small town, worked your way through Stanford, built a career from scratch. You know what it takes to succeed when the system isn't built for you. That's exactly the perspective these programs need. Sophie felt something loosen in her chest, the last piece of doubt that this was charity instead of opportunity. I'm going to need help, she admitted. I can do the strategy and the budget planning, but actually implementing programs, I'll need staff. You'll get staff. Start with 2 junior coordinators and an administrative assistant. Hire more as the division grows. Nathan pulled out his phone, made a note. HR can help you with the hiring process. Or you can poach people from other companies if you know anyone good. I've been cleaning houses for the past year. My professional network isn't exactly robust. Then rebuild it. That's what the gala's for. The gala. Sophie had almost forgotten about it in the chaos of the first day. Tell me about it, she said. What should I expect? Nathan's expression shifted to something like amusement. 500 people, open bar, silent auction, everyone dressed like they're going to the Oscars. It's Sterling Edge's biggest fundraiser of the year. We usually raise about $3 million for various causes. And I'm supposed to, what? Mingle? Make small talk with billionaires? You're supposed to represent the community outreach division. Tell people about the programs we're building. Get them excited about investing in education and mentorship. Nathan's voice softened. You're supposed to be the version of yourself you were before Grant. The one who could walk into a room and make people believe in whatever you were selling. That was a long time ago. It was 4 years. You're 30, not 80. The skills are still there. Nathan stood, started gathering his papers. And besides, you managed to convince Melissa Winters that her fiancé was a con artist in under 5 minutes. If you can do that, you can handle some small talk at a gala. Sophie wanted to argue, but he had a point. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophie threw herself into the job with an intensity that surprised even her. She met with nonprofit directors, toured schools in underprivileged neighborhoods, drafted program proposals, interviewed candidates for her team. Every morning she dropped Lily at childcare, and every evening she picked her up, and in between she worked harder than she had in years. Nathan was right. The skills were still there. She just had to remember how to use them. Elena showed up the Thursday before the gala with another dress. This one, a deep navy that somehow made Sophie look powerful and elegant at the same time. This is the one, Elena announced. You'll walk in and everyone will know you're someone important. I don't feel important. Fake it. That's what everyone else is doing. Elena zipped up the dress. Besides, Nathan will be there. If you get nervous, just look for him. The night of the gala, Sophie stood in front of her bathroom mirror and barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly. Her hair was actually styled instead of pulled into her usual messy bun. She'd practiced her elevator pitch about the community outreach programs until she could deliver it in her sleep. She looked like someone who belonged at a 500-person fundraiser. She looked like Director of Community Outreach for Sterling Edge. She looked like Sophie Carter used to look, before everything fell apart. The car service picked her up at 6. Nathan had offered to go together, but Sophie had declined. She needed to arrive on her own to prove she could do this independently. The venue was the Park Plaza, all crystal chandeliers and marble floors. Sophie walked in and immediately felt underdressed despite the expensive gown. Everyone here looked like they'd been born in evening wear, like they attended galas the way normal people attended barbecues. "Sophie!" She turned to find Nathan approaching, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than her first car. He looked unfairly good, which was annoying because Sophie was trying very hard not to think about how attractive her boss was. "You made it," he said, handing her a glass of champagne from a passing server. "I almost turned around 3 times." "But you didn't." Nathan's smile was warm. "Come on, I'll introduce you to people who actually matter, and we'll avoid the ones who are just here for the free drinks." He was good at this, navigating the room, making connections, knowing exactly how to pitch each conversation. Sophie watched and learned, jumping in when appropriate, mostly just trying not to embarrass herself. And then halfway through the night, she found herself talking to a woman from the Boston Public Schools about potential coding programs, and something clicked. This was what she was good at, connecting ideas, building partnerships, making people excited about possibilities. She'd just forgotten. Nathan caught her eye from across the room and nodded, like he could see the exact moment she stopped pretending and started believing. By the time the formal program started, speeches, awards, the announcement that they'd raised $4 million instead of 3, Sophie was exhausted but exhilarated. She'd handed out 17 business cards. She'd set up 6 preliminary meetings. She'd convinced a venture capitalist to donate $100,000 to the scholarship fund. "You were amazing," Nathan said when they finally escaped to a quiet corner. "I watched you work that room like you'd never left." "I had a good teacher." "I didn't teach you that. You already knew how." Nathan's expression turned serious. "This is who you are, Sophie. Not the woman counting change in a convenience store. This is the real you." Sophie wanted to argue that both versions were real, that people were complicated and contained multitudes. But standing there in the navy dress with the echo of successful conversations still fresh, she let herself believe him. Just for tonight, she let herself believe she really could have this life back. The morning after the gala, Sophie woke up to her phone ringing at 7:30. She fumbled for it, still half asleep, expecting Mrs. Chen or maybe one of the nonprofit directors she'd talked to last night. It was her lawyer. Well, not her lawyer. She couldn't afford one. But the legal aid attorney who'd helped her file the initial paperwork when Grant left. "Ms. Carter, this is David Chen from Boston Legal Aid. I'm calling because we received a filing this morning. Grant Mercer is suing you for defamation." Sophie sat up so fast she nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "He's claiming you made false statements about him at a private event that damaged his reputation and career prospects. He's seeking $200,000 in damages." The room tilted. Sophie gripped the phone harder. "Everything I said was true. I have documentation. I know. And that's our defense. But I need you to come in today so we can go over everything." "Can you make it to my office by 10? Sophie looked at Lily, still sleeping in her crib, and thought about the stack of meetings she had scheduled at Sterling Edge. "Yeah, I'll be there." She called Nathan as soon as she hung up. He answered on the first ring, which meant he was already at the office despite it being barely 8 in the morning. "Grant's suing me for defamation." Silence. Then, "Son of a bitch. My legal aid lawyer wants to meet this morning. I'm going to have to move my meetings." "Don't worry about the meetings. We'll reschedule." Nathan's voice had gone hard. "What do you need?" "I don't know. A real lawyer, probably. Legal aid is great, but they're overworked, and this is $200,000, Nathan. If he wins, he's not going to win. You told the truth. That's not defamation." A pause. "I'm calling my attorney, best defamation specialist in Boston. She'll handle this." "I can't afford—" "Sophie, Nathan cut her off gently. Let me help, please. Sophie wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle this herself. But the number kept echoing in her head. $200,000. If she lost, if somehow Grant convinced a jury that she'd lied, she'd be ruined. Again. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Nathan's attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Morrison, who wore power suits like armor, met Sophie at the legal aid office 2 hours later. She'd already reviewed the filing and had a notepad full of questions. This is weak, Patricia said after Sophie walked her through everything. He's claiming reputational damage, but he can't prove his reputation was legitimate in the first place. Everything you said at that party was verifiable. The fake resume, the debt, the abandonment. That's not defamation. That's truth. So why is he doing this? Sophie asked. Patricia exchanged a look with David Chen, the legal aid attorney. Because he's counting on you being too scared or too broke to fight back. Most defamation suits like this are strategic. They're designed to intimidate, not to win. Well, it's working. I'm intimidated. That's fine. Be intimidated, but don't back down. Patricia pulled out a contract. Nathan's already authorized me to take this case. My firm will handle everything. You just need to sign here agreeing to let us represent you. Sophie read through the contract, her hands shaking slightly. What's this going to cost? Nothing. Nathan's covering it. Patricia, before you argue, let me explain something. The attorney set down her pen. Sterling Edge has a vested interest in this case. Grant tried to defraud the company. You exposed him. If he's allowed to use the legal system to punish you for telling the truth, that sets a dangerous precedent. So this isn't charity. This is the company protecting an employee who protected the company. The logic was sound, even if Sophie suspected Nathan's motivations were more personal than that. She signed the contract. Over the next week, Patricia built their defense like she was preparing for war. Bank statements showing the debt Grant had left Sophie with. Credit card records in Sophie's name for purchases she'd never made. Email correspondence with the apartment complex in New York where Grant had claimed to have a job. Statements from Goldman Sachs and the London VC firm confirming Grant had never worked for them. And then Patricia did something Sophie hadn't expected. She found Grant's other victims. 3 women in the past 8 years, Patricia said, spreading files across her conference table. All similar patterns, all left with debt and broken promises. One of them is willing to testify. Her name was Rebecca Chang, and she met Sophie in Patricia's office on a gray Thursday afternoon. She was 34, a software engineer, and when she shook Sophie's hand, her grip was firm, but her eyes were tired. He told me he worked for a startup in San Francisco, Rebecca said. Said he was about to get a massive payout from an acquisition. We dated for a year. I thought we were building a life together. What happened? Sophie asked, even though she already knew. He borrowed money. Always had a reason. Investment opportunity, family emergency, temporary cash flow problem. I gave him almost $50,000 over 6 months. Rebecca's voice was flat. Then one day he was just gone. Empty apartment, disconnected phone, like he'd never existed. Sophie felt sick. Did you press charges? I tried, but he'd been careful. Everything was framed as loans between partners. Nothing I could prove was fraud. And I was embarrassed. I'm a software engineer. I'm supposed to be smart. I felt like an idiot. You're not an idiot, Sophie said. You're someone who trusted the wrong person. That's different. Rebecca looked at her with something like gratitude. He's doing it again, isn't he, with this Melissa Winters? He was. We stopped him. Good. Rebecca's expression hardened. I want to testify. I want everyone to know what he is. The lawsuit became bigger news than Sophie had anticipated. Tech blogs picked it up because of the Sterling Edge connection. Local news covered it because of the Richard Winters angle. And somewhere in all of that, the story shifted from woman accuses ex-husband to multiple women come forward about serial con artist. Grant's lawyer tried to get the case dismissed. Patricia blocked it. Grant tried to settle out of court. Patricia recommended they refuse. And then, 3 weeks after the initial filing, Grant's lawyer withdrew from the case entirely. He couldn't pay her, Patricia explained over the phone. Or she figured out she was representing a losing case and bailed. Either way, Grant's on his own now. What does that mean? It means he'll probably drop the suit. He can't win without a lawyer, and he knows it. But Grant didn't drop it. He filed new paperwork representing himself, doubling down on the defamation claim with increasingly desperate arguments. Patricia called it legal suicide. Sophie called it terrifying, because desperate people did unpredictable things. She was right to be worried. Sophie was leaving Sterling Edge late on a Friday evening. Everyone else had gone home, but she'd been working on a grant proposal that was due Monday, when she found Grant waiting by her car in the parking garage. Her first instinct was to run back inside, but she forced herself to stay calm. The garage had security cameras. He wouldn't try anything here. "What do you want?" she asked, keeping her distance. Grant looked different than he had at the engagement party, rougher around the edges, like the polish had worn off. "I want you to drop this." "Drop what?" "You're the one who sued me." "I'll drop the lawsuit if you recant everything you said. Tell Melissa it was a misunderstanding. Tell Richard Winters you were angry and made up lies." Grant took a step closer. Sophie held her ground. "Fix this, Sophie." "No." "I'm offering you a way out." "I don't need a way out. I told the truth. You're the one who needs a way out, and I'm not giving you one." Sophie's voice was steady, despite the fear crawling up her spine. "You destroyed my life, Grant. You left me with nothing, and now you want me to help you do the same thing to someone else? Not happening." "You always were stubborn." Grant's expression shifted to something uglier. "You think Nathan Hale actually cares about you? You think this job, this new life is real? He's using you, Sophie. Same as I did. Only difference is he's better at hiding it." "You're wrong." "Am I?" He swoops in to rescue the broken single mother, gives her a job, plays hero. What do you think he wants in return? Grant smiled, cruel. "You're smarter than this. Or you used to be before you let a baby turn your brain to mush." Sophie's hand tightened around her car keys. "You need to leave." "Or what? You'll call security? Get me arrested?" Grant laughed. "I've got nothing left to lose, Sophie. You made sure of that. Melissa won't talk to me. Richard blacklisted me with every investor in Boston. I can't get a job, can't get credit, can't even rent an apartment because your little truth-telling session destroyed everything. Good. You deserve it." Grant moved fast, closing the distance between them before Sophie could react. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same expensive brand he'd always worn, even when they couldn't afford rent. "Be very careful," he said quietly, "because when this all falls apart, and it will, Sophie, it always does, you're going to be right back where you started, alone, broke, desperate, and I'll still be here watching." "Security!" Sophie's voice echoed through the garage. "I need security in the parking garage." Grant backed off immediately, hands raised in mock surrender. "I'm leaving, but remember what I said. This isn't over." He walked away slowly, deliberately, making it clear he wasn't afraid of her or the security cameras or anything else. Sophie stood frozen until she heard footsteps, 2 security guards running toward her. "Miss Carter, are you okay?" She wasn't, but she nodded anyway. "That man, Grant Mercer. He approached me. I want it on record, and I want to make sure he's not allowed in this building or parking garage again." The guards took her statement. Nathan showed up 20 minutes later, still in his work clothes, looking like he'd run from wherever he'd been when security called him. "Are you hurt?" he asked, scanning her like he could see damage. "No. He didn't touch me, just talked." Sophie's hands were still shaking. "He said to drop everything or I don't know, he didn't make specific threats, just implied bad things." Nathan's jaw was tight. "We're getting a restraining order." "He'll just ignore it." "Maybe, but at least it'll be documented, and if he comes near you again, we can have him arrested." Nathan looked at the security guards. "I want every entrance to this building monitored. If Grant Mercer shows up anywhere near Sterling Edge or Sophie's apartment, I want to know immediately." After the guards left to file their report, Nathan drove Sophie home himself. She'd left her car in the garage, too shaken to drive. They sat in his Mercedes outside her apartment building, neither of them moving to get out. "He said you were using me," Sophie said finally. "That this job, everything, it's all just you playing hero." Nathan turned to look at her. "Do you believe that?" "I don't know what I believe anymore. A month ago, I was cleaning houses. Now I'm a director at a tech company living in a new apartment. She'd moved 2 weeks ago to to a place in a better neighborhood with actual heat and no mysterious stains, wearing designer clothes to galas. It doesn't feel real. What would make it feel real? Sophie thought about it. Time, maybe. Doing the job long enough to prove I deserve it, not feeling like it could all disappear tomorrow. It's not going to disappear. Nathan's voice was firm. You're good at this work, Sophie. The nonprofit partnerships you've built, the programs you're developing, that's all you. I gave you an opportunity, but you're the one making it successful. Grant said when it falls apart, I'll end up alone again. Grant's a liar who's watching his own life fall apart and wants to drag you down with him. Nathan reached over, took her hand. You're not alone. Even if this, whatever this is between us, even if that goes nowhere, you have a job you earned. You have people who respect you. You have a daughter who's healthy and safe and taken care of. None of that is going away. Sophie looked at their joined hands. What is this? Between us? I don't know. Does it need a label right now? Maybe not, but I need to know if I'm reading things wrong. If the way you look at me sometimes. If I'm imagining it. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and gentle it made Sophie's breath catch. You're not imagining it, he said, but you're also still rebuilding your life, and I'm your boss, and rushing into anything right now would be stupid for about a dozen reasons. So what do? We take it slow. We figure it out as we go, and we don't let Grant or anyone else tell us what this is or isn't. Nathan looked at her. Is that okay? Sophie nodded, not trusting her voice. The restraining order was granted the following week. Grant ignored it 3 days later, showing up outside the childcare facility where Sophie picked up Lily. The staff called the police. Grant was arrested, spent a night in jail, and finally, dropped the defamation lawsuit. Patricia called it a win. Sophie called it exhausting. But in the aftermath, something shifted. The constant fear that Grant would show up, that he'd find a way to destroy her new life, began to fade. He'd played his last card and lost. And Sophie was still standing. Work became easier. Not easy. There were still challenges, budget constraints, difficult partnerships to navigate. But easier in the sense that Sophie stopped waiting for someone to realize she didn't belong there. She hired her team, launched the first pilot program in 3 Boston public schools, and presented the results to Sterling Edge's board of directors with the same confidence she'd had 4 years ago. Nathan watched from the back of the room, and when she finished and the board members applauded, he was smiling like he'd known all along she could do this. 3 months after Sophie started at Sterling Edge, her sister came to visit. Claire had been skeptical about everything, the job, Nathan, the sudden transformation of Sophie's life. But when she saw Sophie's new apartment, met her colleagues, watched her interact with Nathan at a casual dinner, something in her expression softened. You're actually happy, Claire said that night after Nathan left. They were sitting on Sophie's new couch, real furniture, not Craigslist garbage, while Lily played with blocks on the floor. I think I am, Sophie admitted. Is that weird? After everything you went through? It's not weird, it's kind of amazing. Claire paused. So what's the deal with Nathan? And don't tell me it's just professional. Sophie felt her face heat. It's complicated. Complicated how? He's my boss. I'm a single mother. We're both still figuring out what we want, so we're taking it slow. How slow? Very slow. Like, we've had dinner maybe 6 times, twice with the kids, 4 times alone. We talk every day. He brings me coffee in the mornings, but you haven't kissed him yet. No. Sophie picked up one of Lily's blocks, turned it over in her hands. I want to, but I'm scared of moving too fast, of messing up this job, of Lily getting attached and then it not working out, of being wrong about him the way I was wrong about Grant. Claire leaned back against the couch. You know Nathan's not Grant, right? You can see the difference? Logically, yes. Emotionally? Sophie shrugged. I'm working on it. My therapist says it's normal to have trust issues after what happened. You're back in therapy? Sterling Edge's insurance actually covers it. I see someone twice a month. It helps. Claire reached over and squeezed Sophie's hand. I'm proud of you. You know that, right? What you've built here, how you've rebuilt yourself. It's incredible. Sophie felt tears prick her eyes. I couldn't have done it without help. Maybe, but you're the one who did the work. Nobody else could have done that for you. The Sterling Edge Foundation Gala came around again in December, marking almost exactly a year since Sophie had stood in that convenience store counting change. The symmetry wasn't lost on her as she got ready. Another dress from Elena, another night of networking and speeches, but this time she wasn't the new hire trying to prove herself. This time she was presenting the results of the community outreach program she'd built. Nathan picked her up at 7. He'd started doing that, not sending a car service, but actually showing up himself. It was a small thing, but it mattered. "You ready for this?" he asked as she climbed into the passenger seat. "I'm giving a presentation about coding programs to 500 rich people. Am I ready?" "No. Am I doing it anyway?" "Yes." Nathan laughed. "That's pretty much how I feel every time I present to the board." The gala was in full swing by the time they arrived. Sophie recognized faces from last year, but this time when they greeted her, it was as a colleague, not as Nathan's mysterious +1. She worked the room with her team. The 2 coordinators she'd hired had turned out to be brilliant, talking about the programs, the students they'd helped, the partnerships they'd built. When it was time for the formal program, Sophie stood backstage with her presentation queued up and her heart trying to beat out of her chest. Nathan found her there. "Hey, you're going to kill this. What if I freeze up there? Then you unfreeze and keep going, but you won't freeze." He touched her face, gentle. "I've watched you present to skeptical nonprofit directors and nervous school administrators and a room full of board members who thought community outreach was a waste of money. You've never frozen yet. There's always a first time. Not tonight." Nathan kissed her forehead, a brief press of lips that somehow steadied her more than any pep talk could have. "Go show them what you've built." The presentation went perfectly. Sophie talked about the students in the coding program, showed the statistics on improved grades and engagement, shared testimonials from teachers and parents. She talked about the scholarship fund that had already helped 12 kids attend STEM camps. She talked about the mentorship program pairing Sterling Edge employees with underserved high school students. And when she finished, the applause was thunderous. Richard Winters found her afterward, Melissa at his side. The younger woman was doing better, therapy, taking time away from dating, focusing on her own career. She hugged Sophie when she saw her. "That was incredible," Melissa said. "What you've built. Those kids are lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have this opportunity." "No," Richard cut in. "Nathan was lucky to have the sense to hire you. That program is going to change lives. Hell, it already is." After the formal program ended and the dancing started, Nathan found Sophie again. She was exhausted, running on adrenaline and the satisfaction of a successful presentation. "Dance with me," he said, offering his hand. Sophie let him lead her to the floor. They'd done this before, danced at various Sterling Edge events over the past few months, but tonight felt different. Nathan's hand on her waist was warmer. The way he looked at her was softer. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. "I know I tell you that a lot, but tonight especially. Watching you up there, that's who you've always been. That's who I saw 4 years ago when you were giving presentations to VC firms. I feel like a different person than I was a year ago. You are. You're stronger now. You've survived things that would have destroyed most people, and you came out the other side better for it." Sophie rested her head against his chest, let herself relax into the moment. The music was slow, some jazz standard she half recognized. Around them, other couples danced, talked, laughed. The normal noise of people at a party. "Nathan? Yeah? Can we leave early? I know that's probably rude since you're the CEO and this is your event, but I'm exhausted and I really just want to go home." Nathan pulled back to look at her. "My place or yours?" The question hung between them, loaded with implication. "Yours?" Sophie said before she could second-guess it. "If that's okay? If I'm not—" "Sophie." Nathan stopped her with a kiss, right there on the dance floor in front of 500 people. It was brief but deliberate, a statement. "My place is more than okay." They left through a side exit, Nathan texting something to his assistant about leaving early. The drive to his house in Brookline was quiet, both of them processing what was about to happen. Nathan's house was beautiful, modern but warm, with toys in the living room because Carter was home with his nanny. They said quiet hellos to the nanny, checked on Carter, who was sleeping, and then they were alone in Nathan's study with the door closed. I should tell you something, Sophie said, suddenly nervous. Since Grant, I haven't been with anyone. And even before that, we don't have to do anything, Nathan said immediately. We can just talk, or watch terrible TV, or I can drive you home if you want. I don't want to go home. Sophie stepped closer. I want to be here. I want this. I'm scared. Of what? Of messing this up. Of it not being what I've built up in my head. Of you realizing I'm just damaged goods with more baggage than anyone should have to deal with. Nathan took her face in his hands. You're not damaged goods. You're someone who survived, and whatever baggage you have, I've got my own. We'll figure it out together. This kiss was different from the one at the gala, deeper, more urgent, full of months of wanting and waiting. Sophie kissed him back with everything she'd been holding in, and when they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Upstairs? Nathan asked. Sophie nodded. Later, lying in Nathan's bed with the moonlight streaming through the windows, Sophie felt something settle in her chest. This was real. This life, this job, this man next to her. It wasn't charity or pity or some rescue fantasy. It was just two broken people who'd found each other and decided to try anyway. What are you thinking? Nathan asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. That a year ago I was counting change for baby formula, and now I'm here. Regrets? No, just amazement, I guess, that things can change this much. Sophie turned to look at him. That I can change this much. You didn't change. You just remembered who you were. Nathan kissed her temple. And for what it's worth, I'm glad I was there to see it. 6 months later, Sophie stood in her new office at Sterling Edge. They'd given her a bigger one when the Community Outreach Division expanded again, and looked at the photos on her desk. Lily, now 13 months old and learning to walk. Carter and Lily playing together, becoming friends despite the age difference. Nathan and Sophie at last month's company retreat, both smiling like they had a secret. And tucked in the back, a photo of Sophie from 4 years ago, in her old Sterling Edge office, looking confident and capable and completely unaware of what was coming. She'd survived what came. More than survived. She'd rebuilt. Not into the person she was before Grant, but into someone stronger. Someone who knew what rock bottom looked like and had clawed her way back up anyway. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. Nathan Hale. Board meeting ran long. Pick up Lily and I'll grab Carter. Dinner at my place. Sophie. Our place. We've been living together for 2 months. You can say, our place. Nathan. Our place. I like the sound of that. Sophie smiled and gathered her things. She had presentations to prepare for tomorrow, 3 new school partnerships to finalize, a conference call with a major donor. But right now, she was going to pick up her daughter and go home to the life she'd built from the ashes of the old one. Grant's last attempt to contact her had been 4 months ago, an email asking for forgiveness, claiming he'd changed. Sophie had deleted it without responding. He was her past, and she'd made peace with the fact that closure didn't always come in neat packages. Sometimes it was enough to just keep moving forward. As she left Sterling Edge's building, Sophie passed the convenience store where this had all started. It was still there. Same flickering lights, same tired aesthetic. But Sophie wasn't the same person who'd stood at that counter counting coins. She was director of community outreach. She was Nathan's partner. She was Lily's mother. She was the woman who'd faced down her worst nightmare and won. And when she got home that night, to Nathan cooking dinner while Carter helped and Lily banged enthusiastically on pots and pans, Sophie looked at her chaotic, imperfect, beautiful life and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Gratitude. Not for being rescued, not for being saved, but for being given the chance to save herself and for having the strength to take it. That was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.